Okay, it's Tuesday, July 28th, 2026, and it's 5:01 p.m., and I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Hayden City Council to order, please. Abby, roll call, please.
Council President DePriest?
Here.
Councilmember Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'd be happy to. Everybody please stand if you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Our flag's all wrapped up.
Okay, at this time, we'll call for any additions or corrections to the agenda.
See that?
Yeah, staff would just like to ask for 5B to be brought up before the public hearing under 4, so that that section of that topic to allow Tim, our consultant, to do an update on the law enforcement strategic plan. And then any results of conversation as a result of that input can go back under 5B. So we just break that one apart to give him a chance to not have to be waiting to go through that public hearing.
Do we have any discussion on that? Issues with that?
No.
Yeah, okay. So I think we're ready to move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of A, approval of June 15th, 2026 joint City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes. B, approval of June 17th, 2026 special City Council meeting minutes. C, approval of June 23rd, 2026 City Council meeting minutes. D, approval of independent contractor agreement with RC Worst and Company for safety grates. E, ratification of 2026 amended Northern State Security Contractual Services Agreement. F, ratification of 2026 Hayden Days Beer and Wine Garden Agreement with Brewscape Beer Company. G, approval of Connolly Enterprise independent contractor agreements for Youth Performing Arts Workshop. H, approval of bills for payments. Any discussion or a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor.
Okay,
My motion is to approve the consent calendar 1A through 1H. Second.
okay. Abby, roll call, please.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yes.
Council President DePriest?
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember Roeder?
Yes.
Okay, now is the time for visitor or public comment. Looks like we have one. Again, this is for public comment. It is not a discussion. There's no back and forth, that type of thing. And you will have 3 minutes. And it looks like our first person is Amy McCamley.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to really encourage our city council and our mayor to consider having prayer before our meetings. It's interesting, I think, like the times have, I think, just, I don't know if I want to say changed, but possibly, our country was founded under God. And if we look at our states around us, Washington, Oregon, and California, I think they've kind of lost sight of God and our morals and our values. And this isn't about a particular religion. It's simply just about God. Again, we just did the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're pledging that our nation was founded under God. And so recently, the Randy Westland from Mayor in Post Falls, he actually is now doing prayer in Post Falls. And I thought, wow, Hayden can do better. Hayden can step up and do this. Their prayer is simple 2 sentences. The mayor does it, so you're not having to worry about different organizations coming in or this priest or this pastor. Again, it's not about religion. It's just simply about a simple prayer and really just, asking God to lead our city. Because I think the position that all of you guys have, it is very difficult and it's very challenging. If we look at the president of our country, he's now been, since he's been president, leading things into prayer more often. Our state legislators in Idaho are leading in prayer. Our schools are now needing to do a moment of silence. So I feel like tides are shifting, which, they shouldn't have shifted the other direction to begin with. But I really think it's time to bring God back into our city and our decisions. And again, not about a certain religion or favoring a certain group of people, but just going back to what our founding fathers brought up. And so I would really just encourage you to consider, is there some way to do this, especially since Post Falls is kind of, I think, leading the way in doing this. And then the second thing I want to bring up that Post Falls is doing is no flock cameras. They've kind of made that announcement that in their city, there won't be flock cameras. And I know that has to do with the police department, and maybe we're in a different situation because we don't have a police department here. Maybe it's coming from the sheriff's department. But again, I think it's about being proactive. I think sometimes what happens is the city council will make decisions, and then as a community, maybe we're scrambling because we didn't attend the proper meetings or we weren't being proactive enough. And so I think it's just about being proactive, and maybe as a council considering, do we want to have a policy that's just no flock cameras or surveillance is going to come into our city? And some people might say, well, if you're a law-abiding citizen, which I can happily say I am, I've never been arrested in my entire life ever. But then what do you have to worry? Well, we know that in Colorado, that woman was accused of stealing packages off of a porch, and that was from a flock camera, and she didn't do it. So we know that there's, I guess, error that can take place in it, and I think it's just something that's unnecessary. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is that all we have for public comment? Looks like. Okay, so it looks like next up we have an Arts Commission report. Is yours for the public hearing or for the public comment?
You filled out the green form for the public hearing related to code amendments? Is that correct?
Yeah, okay.
So when we get to the public hearing, then you'll be called on for your testimony.
Okay, do we have any other public comment? If so, fill out a public comment card. No more comments? Okay, looks like we have an Arts Commission report. Nancy Jones.
Good evening, Council. Nancy Jones on behalf of the Arts Commission, bringing you your quarterly report. You did have a written copy of this, but just to hit the highlights this evening of what we've been up to the last few months. Internally on the group, we are continuing to look for some grant opportunities. The one grant we had hoped to apply for, unfortunately, they decided to end. And so that source of funding has left us, but we do have a few other avenues that we're looking at, and we'll be talking about that more at our next meeting. And our public arts survey is still up on the city website, and we've been pushing that QR code out to different community pages and hoping that people will fill that out so it can give us some community direction as we move into next year. As far as public events and projects, we are very excited. Our Come Together Bench program is getting near the end. We finally have got dates set in August. We will be starting the painting of the benches. Commission members will be coming in mid-August to do the cleaning of the second half of the benches. All of those designs, of course, have been approved by council. The artists are very, very excited. And we are continuing to touch base. There are some local businesses that may still be willing to contribute toward that financially, and we are continuing to follow up with those businesses. So hopefully we'll see some donations coming in. And the Community Arts Showcase. So in September 12th, we are going to hold a youth workshop. It's a one-day workshop with a very well-known local artist himself, Dan Connolly. He will be leading a group of kindergarten through fifth graders in a one-day arts workshop for theater. And at the end of that, the community will be invited out to come and see the youth present a short 30-minute presentation of Treasure Island. We're also going to have some different displays there of painting, sculpting, different types of arts we see in the community, just again to raise awareness and appreciation for art in Hayden. And then our City Hall featured artist this quarter is Paula Dolan, who is a local retired resident, and we're very excited to have her. In the fourth quarter, as we usually do, we will be inviting Hayden City staff to come forward and be our featured artists for the quarter. So hopefully, if you can just pass that word along. I know Abby and Amber will be doing that. I know that we had at least one councilman who participated last year and it was appreciated. So we do have that. And then the last thing is we did participate this weekend, of course, in Hayden Days, and wanted to just thank council for the opportunity to do what we do. We had such a wonderful time passing out crayons to the kids at the parade and flyers on the upcoming youth event. And it was just very well received, and a lot of good feedback from the community we talked to on Saturday. Did you have any questions for us, council?
Questions?
Yes.
Where is the location of the showcase?
It is going to be right here out and back. Of course, we're looking very, very forward to when we have a big and beautiful event location. But in the meantime, we're going to keep making use of the space back here. So rain or shine, we're going to be out there on September 12th.
Any more questions? No? Thank you, Nancy, very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, 3B is quarterly written reports.
Included in the packet was written reports from the commissions.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Council has any questions or comments?
I do not.
Okay, are we moving, is this where we're moving report up?
Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda is, if I can find it on here to move things around, a status update of the law enforcement and strategic plan by Mr. Tim Donahue of Matrix. Tim, welcome.
Good evening, City Council members. Tim Donahue with Matrix Consulting Group. So we have a couple deliverables coming up, but before I talk about that, I want to give you an update on the community survey. As of this morning, there's been 203 responses. We haven't had any in the last couple of weeks, but we're up to 203, which is really seen a jump in the last outside the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks prior to that, we saw a jump. So I think there must have been some type of social media or website campaign. So thank you for that. This week, we will be delivering a interim report, which will be titled the Operational and Staffing Needs Assessment Report. And that will be a report that outlines your current needs related to the data that we received from the Sheriff's Office, patrol, investigative, staffing needs, as well as administrative support positions. And we're going to deliver that to the city to review, comment on, and then that, like I said, that'll be delivered the end of this week. This report will be, the focus is really a workload-based analysis of the data that we received from the Sheriff's Office. The data that we don't have, we are benchmarking with best practices, which is typically in the administrative position, support positions. And then we will construct an organizational structure for you to review as well. Once we get the review back, that really kicks off the last stage of the project, which is the overall the strategic planning and study report. This report is where we will take all the workload-based staffing analysis, the organizational structure, and add the price to that, as well as transition planning and a cost analysis of what you're currently receiving versus what your staffing should look like on, say, a standalone police department. And that is, we're on track. I know most of you know that we had some data issues at the beginning. We've kind of rectified that. Yes, we did not receive all the data we asked for, but we definitely received enough to do analysis. So we were busy last month cleaning that data and analyzing it, and we're very close to finishing this workload-based analysis. And then, like I said, at the end of the next month, which is really what our project, if you remember our initial project schedule, we kind of brought ourselves back on track after the data kind of cleaning, but you will expect that final report next month, more towards the end of August.
Thank you.
And that's any questions? Oh, sorry, sir.
Yeah, I'd say thank you, Tim. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. Hi, Tim, how are you?
I'm very well, sir. How are you?
This is Matt Roeder. We've communicated by email. Thank you for your time. First question is, out of the 200 and some respondents to the survey, how many of those were out of the city of Hayden?
Those were all in city. I'm not counting the ones that are out of your city jurisdiction. I don't have a number on those, but those are all I asked for, the jurisdiction ones. So all 203 were within the city of Hayden.
Great, great. Then the other question is that we know we have a problem looming for the future. And my question is, as a consultant, as a professional consultant, I'd like to know, do you think it's premature for us to be exploring or looking at what are our possible options at this point? Or should we wait until you give us the report and we go from there? Does it make sense to start to do a little bit of legwork so that we're not pressured to move forward too quickly?
Well, that's obviously your prerogative, but without that final report, if you're asking for my recommendation, I would say wait until you receive that final report with all the information. Depending on what you're calling legwork, and there's certainly no reason you can't start doing research on your end, but any hard, fast decisions or anything like that, I would certainly wait for the final report, which will be coming before you know it.
Thank you.
And even this interim report, you're going to see you're going to see what your needs are at the end of this week for sure. So you could theoretically start after this interim report comes, because this is really the crux of the analysis. It's your workload-based analysis of what your needs look like. But you could certainly start researching after this interim report comes for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Tim, this is David Erickson. Thanks again for your time. In regards to the final delivery, obviously it's an estimate. Do you know roughly about where you think that final report will land, time-wise?
If I had to guess, it's going to be towards the end of the month. Yes, sir. I would say probably the last week of August.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Schaefer?
I have no questions for him.
Okay, so all questions?
Good.
Okay, I guess we're done, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Have a good evening.
Absolutely. Have a great night. It was nice seeing all of you.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, so now we go back, it looks like up to a public hearing related to code amendments to Hayden City Code Titles 2, 4, 7, 8, and 9. And it looks like Donna will be doing that? What's that?
Remember the procedures to read?
Procedure 2, 4.
Yep, so go ahead, when she's walking up, you can, this is for the ordinance, but where's the one for the?
This is, Donna, hold on just a sec. Yeah, that's all Okay,
It's okay.
okay.
You just go ahead and state that you're opening the public hearing.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing related to the code amendments to Hayden City Code Titles 2, 4, 7, 8, and 9. Donna.
Well, that was quick. You're too fast.
Clarification, do we remain silent during this part, or can we?
So I can certainly jump in and help guide this. So we'll open the public hearing, which means that staff will present the file. So that's what Donna will be doing. And then you may ask questions of staff. And then the public hearing will be open where people can come speak who are signed up. And then we will close the public hearing, and then you can deliberate towards a decision. But ultimately, the enactment of this decision is through an ordinance.
Thank you.
And it's really important during your question time of staff that you don't let that migrate into deliberations, because you will not have heard from the public yet.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had a couple of workshops with City Council. One of them was in May, where we talked about Titles 2, 4, and 7. And then in June, we had a follow-up workshop with Council that we talked about Titles 8 and 9. I provided a memo to Council with all of the red lines that were provided in both the first workshop as well as the second workshop with your board book. And I have those on PDF that if you want to look at specifics, we can. And this is just a recap summary of that information that was previously provided. So Title 2, the state changed the area of impact to the area of city impact to being the area of impact. So in the Planning and Zoning Commission, it had a reference to area of city impact, and this is just striking the word city to be in compliance with Idaho state statutes. Title IV are proposed amendments to the nuisance code. They affect the chapter provided is the purpose of the nuisance code is to ensure that public nuisances will be eliminated and abated promptly and efficiently. The proposed code amendments provide a definition for what a public nuisance is. It provides a definition of who those responsible parties are, whether they're owners or tenants or lessees, business people or residents. It identifies what a public nuisance is, gives a long list of what those could be considered. It provides methods of abatement, and it provides for a violation and penalty. So there's been some, we talked about this at the May meeting, and there's been some questions regarding the penalty piece that have come up. So I wanted to just kind of go back. This is the same slide mostly that was part of the workshop. And so penalties and violations, the way the code is written, are really only a tool that happens at the time that a violation goes all the way to the courts. So the current code that was adopted in 2001 identified a $100 a day penalty could be charged should a judge order it as such. And in the code that we're proposing in front of you, we identify that each violation is a not to exceed of $1,000. Nuisances rarely correct themselves in days. They go on for weeks. Generally speaking, it's not a quick fix. We recognize that. And in many instances, the first nuisance is corrected, and then that same location pops up again. I can think of one weed violation that we actually send a notice out and remind them to cut their weeds almost annually and have for the last 5 years. Absentee landlord property owners, and they just want to only figure out that once a year, that sweet spot to get somebody to come in and cut it, and that doesn't always work. The proposed language is attempting to provide guidance as to frequency of the enforcement violation, to provide some incentive to the violator to get in compliance and stay that way. And the city only brings a violation to the courts as a very last resort. We absolutely don't want to get to the point where it's costly for the city to take stuff to court. That's not our first choice, and it's a last ditch kind of conversation. So there was concern about how 413 is written in the code today as a single paragraph. And so all I did here is suggest that I didn't change the verbiage in that paragraph at all. All I did was put it in some bullet points to try to make it more clear. So what this says is that if a violation gets all the way to the courts, that as the first time it gets there, that the judge could impose, and that's why there's mays in here, the court may assess a fine not to exceed of $1,000 for each violation. The court could decide that each day that the responsible party allowed that nuisance to continue on the property, they may be declared a separate violation, so there could be $1,000 apiece. Should the court make that decision? And then it identifies that if you land in front of the court twice, within a 2-year period of time for the same violation, that it could be a misdemeanor instead of an infraction with a $2,000 penalty and or 6 months in jail. I don't want to send somebody to jail. We just want them to clean up their mess. But trying to get some teeth in it. I just want to clarify that I tried to answer the questions that were posed to me, proposed and still within what was noticed.
Question,
Yes.
Donna, either if it's a infraction or a misdemeanor violation, who's in charge of enforcing that code?
Well, right.
The answer really is the city is the person, or the entity that is enforcing the code. But many times if we have a case that we can't get compliance with a property owner who's out of compliance is that we'll seek assistance from the court systems to help us get to, if we have to.
I understand the court will make a judgment on it, but who, I understand if you're going to charge somebody with a misdemeanor, and correct me if I'm wrong, or infraction, they've got to be a policeman or a deputy that has the authority to do that. So does that mean that we will have to have Cooney County deputies or our own police department enforce this?
They issue the citation and/or they send the report to your prosecutor's office for determination of charging on a misdemeanor.
Right, we would not have a city employee doing that. I just want to be real clear on where that responsibility lies.
But, and my answer was in the frame of answering on behalf of, it is the city through our either contracted police department or our own that would be enforcing that.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Donna, so I just want to take responsibility. I'm the person that challenged you on both the verbiage and what I thought was the punitive nature of the fine. Just for the benefit of everybody here who may be speaking during public comment, can you just relate to me in 2 paragraphs or less what you said to me earlier, just so that everybody understands kind of the history and why we jumped from $100 to $1,000?
So the ordinance that approved this was approved nearly a quarter of a century ago. 25 years ago is when that $100 number was associated to violations. We have taken, I can speak to the one case that I was involved in that went all the way to court. So in that one case, we had a property owner that had a nuisance violation. They had tall weeds. They had automotive not running and automobiles in disrepair that were strewn all over their front yards and their backyard and flowing into the streets. And we chased that for a good length of time to try to bring them into compliance of the area, and got to the point where they just refused to do anything, nothing, zero, no movement at all, which doesn't really leave you any choices but to seek direction. So we ended up going to court, and the judge that we got at that point in time recognized the fact that the city had good documentation, we had good photos, we documented all of the back and forth with the letters back and forth with the property owners in an attempt to get them to come into compliance. And the judge said, I give you 30 days to come into compliance. On the 31st day, we're going to start charging you a fine for every day that you're not in compliance. And they had that property cleaned up in 2 weeks. And we haven't had any problem with that property since. So we do a really, I want to say this, like 16 Ways from Sunday, we work very, very hard at not going to court. We want people to clean up their property, and we want to be able to provide them an opportunity to do that.
So it's not like you're just throwing $1,000 fine at everybody who doesn't clean up their yards, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I would offer to say that in many cases with the zoning violations or the nuisance violations that we have, the amount of staff time and costs that we have into it far exceed what we would ever going to get back in the case of a fine or if we go to court, right? So at the end of the day, it's a deterrent to try to get landowners to comply, because ultimately that is our goal. It's not to fine them, it's to get them into compliance and to maintain compliance.
Correct. Okay. Title VII is the public right-of-way encroachment permit, where we added a requirement for subrogation waivers on the certificate of insurance, which is pretty customary. We provided some clarity regarding the differences between a performance and a warranty guarantee for the sureties that we collect, and we updated the name of the standards that were to be followed. In Title VIII, We updated definitions to be consistent through the plan, policies, standards. Chapter 2, we did some updates to the wastewater services, stormwater. In Chapter 3, pretreatment, Standard 4, Chapter 4. Major and minor utility infrastructure and wireless communication facilities, some updates. And in 9, we did some updates in road naming and addressing. More specifically, in Chapter 2, wastewater, we provided clarity about, the sewer utility system, what properties were eligible to connect, where the service area actually exists, and how to expand those services. We updated the terminology and the design and construction standards, and we removed that reimbursement for sewer manholes that was in there previously. In Chapter 3, we updated when the stormwater requirement shall be met. The previous or the existing code identifies that it's only when you have a commercial or light industrial project, and now it's related to all permits. Anything that has site development for which grading or construction of building permits, they all have to follow that regulation. We provided clarity for design standards and performance standards related to stormwater, and we updated the exceptions and enforcements to make them consistent with the other chapters of this title. Chapter 4, pretreatment, designated somebody called a superintendent. Nobody here knows who superintendent is, so that superintendent would be delegated to the city engineer and or the public works director or their designee in order to make those consistent, that chapter consistent with the code as well. Chapters 5 and 6 had references to zone designations that don't exist anymore, so we updated those to the current zones today. And then we updated code references to the right place that they were supposed to point to, which they weren't previously. In Title 9, in the building regulations, in the road naming and addressing chapter of Title 9, we updated the city department who implements road naming and addressing, because that's a function of the plat process, which is in community development, and it's a function of the building permits that we create those parcels and their associated addresses in our software. And we provided updates for the administrative provisions, again, to be consistent with other chapters of the code. Questions for me?
Any questions?
I had a question. Going back to Title 4, when updating the violation penalties, is there any other city in the area or any other jurisdiction that has implemented something similar to this that's showing good results that this is modeled off of, or?
I couldn't say whether they're showing good results, but we did see similar maximums versus minimums.
Got it. So this is within the range of some neighboring cities. Got it. Okay.
Questions?
Done. Okay, thank you, Donna.
I don't know what slide to leave up, so
Pick one. And if so,
how about that one?
there you go. That's what we're here to talk about. Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing comment time. It's very similar to regular public comment. You'll have an opportunity to come up and speak to council related to this issue. Again, it's not a back and forth question and answer type of situation. We're here to take your input. And the first person we have is Summer Bushnell from Post Falls. Says maybe. You want to speak?
Yeah,
Okay. Says you wanted to ask a question?
Or I guess, yeah, rhetorical questions from your guys' point of view. I wasn't sure when I filled out that form if I was for or against because I hadn't heard the presentation. I would say I'm leaning against, but I'm still in the maybe stage. I think my concern was when I read up on it, having the fine jump from $100 to not exceed $1,000. I get what was being said about that fee being 25 years old, but it makes the city look like it's more of an HOA. And that's where my concern was. And also about when jail time was possible. That just seemed concerning. I think the example that was given, I think by Donna, I think the courts do need to get involved after a while, but I think having jail time that was mentioned in one of the meeting things, that seems excessive for like a weed issue or a noise issue. So that was my concerns. And I think too is, I think that people choose to live in an HOA, people that don't, that are in the city of Hayden, they don't want as many rules. And I think you just need to take that into consideration in this hearing. And I would think there's got to be a middle ground. I don't think you need the fine to not exceed 1,000. You could make it to be 300 or 500. I would hate to see an older person that just needs the community to help them to end up, having these fees and fines that they can't pay when all they need is some help with their weeds. And I don't know specifically what happened with the example that was given earlier, but that's something to take consideration. I don't want to see an older person get fined out of their home. I would just say maybe reprioritize. This seems like a low priority in terms of code enforcement and what codes need to be changed. So just consider that during the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Amy McCamley, Hayden wishes to speak against.
I have a lot of concerns about this. First of all, I choose to live in an HOA because I don't want weeds and junky cars in my neighborhood. I'll drive through my neighborhood prior to the HOA and I get a little bummed because I'm like, oh, those cars are sitting there. But then I remind myself, like, people have property rights. And it's not for me to infringe my, I guess, pristine look that I want onto others. So that's why I choose to live in an HOA. A lot of people choose not to live in an HOA because they don't want to be told what to do. And I think especially living here in Idaho, that's a slippery slope when it comes to property rights. That's like the first concern. The second concern is since we don't have code enforcement, and maybe I'm mistaken, but then it sounds like since we don't have code enforcement, then who would enforce this would have to come from the sheriff's department. So then are we now spending money on the sheriff's department to go after people with weeds in their yard versus crime? Since that seems to be also we're so concerned about the crime happening in Hayden, which I don't really think there's a lot of crime, but just going back to that. So if we don't have code enforcement, is it the sheriff? And are we now spending money and time having our sheriff go after people with weeds and cars? There's that point. And then the other point is going back to what Summer had brought up, what is the why? I'm always why is this happening? I work with children, so there's always a why behind the behavior. Is that person not doing it because of their mental state? I think about when my mom passed away, probably for 6 months, I couldn't even hardly shower. So I think to myself, if this was me and I got this notice in the mail, your weeds were overgrown, and then in 6 months, I'm going through this trauma in my family, not being able to come up for air. What is the why? I think we're a small enough community to where it's let's pull together and find out the why and try and support them. And then if it's the case, because I get it, there's gonna be some people who are like, F you, I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyways. Kind of flip side is that's their right as property owners and that property rights. And then the excessiveness of a fine and jail time. And I hear what Donna's saying, that's not the intention, and I get it. And maybe the city council and maybe the city people right here in this room, it's not the intention to do the jail time or the $2,000 fine. But the problem is, as we know, when you put something like this in writing, that could be the result. So to me, it's not a safeguard saying well, we don't want them to do jail. Well, then if that's the case, let's take that language out. That is just completely ridiculous. And also that fine amount is ridiculous when people are just struggling to buy groceries and then to loom over that fine. So I think it's a slippery slope. And I'm just super disappointed that this was even brought up, especially with our town. It kind of feels like a California thing. And that's where I came from. And it's wow, I never thought that I would see that here in Hayden.
Thank you. Next up is Tristan Fitzgerald against.
Good evening, council and members of the community, staff. My name is Tristan Fitzgerald. I'm a third generation Hayden resident, raising the fourth. I'm against some of the proposed changes in Section 4. I appreciate the assurances that, that these sorts of things won't be weaponized, but the fact is that within a span of a few years, everybody here could be different, and those assurances don't really go very far. What does go far is what's written in black and white. Idaho law, I did some research, has some important clarifiers about public nuisance. And the public nuisance, what the definition of public nuisance in this document is not the same as Idaho's definition. Idaho just calls it a general nuisance. A public nuisance adds additional components related to the broad impact to others. This statute doesn't say anything about it. It doesn't say 1 neighbor, 5 neighbors, 10 neighbors. Idaho Code 52102 defines a public nuisance as one that affects at the same time, an entire community or neighborhood or any considerable number of persons. And this seems to omit that important clarifier. It has only a general nuisance, so what is being called public nuisance is not the same as Idaho's definition of public nuisance in its entirety. It's incomplete and unnecessary, and I don't know if it would be enforceable if it were challenged because of those discrepancies. The broad impact language is important. It's not just technical, but it's distinct in Idaho's law. Without that clarity, the proposed language conflates those individual types, which also include private and moral, lumping them all together. References are 52107 for private and 52103 through 106 for moral. All of those are distinct in Idaho codes and have distinct elements. So cities don't typically become involved, especially the size of Hayden, in civil, small, private nuisance matters. Those are typically handled at tort, and they're typically handled either I'm reaching over my fence, or they're handled through civil sorts of things. And so this ordinance makes no differentiation between, I've got one neighbor coming after me trying to weaponize this, or I've got 5, or I've got 10, or I've got 1,000. And there are differences in scope, right? It's also important that clear language be on the books because it protects we property owners from being subjected to government enforcement over those purely private disputes or minor conditions that don't impact the community at scale, which is what I hear being said. Like, we don't intend for these things to happen, but if they're in black and white, they could be misused if it's not clear. The other pieces in there, it talks about the language which is offensive, which is subjective, and interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life, which is also rather subjective. So I also echo that question, like, who decides? Like, as a resident, I might be served with something, but I want to know, who was it that was spying on my property and who's offended and who's not very comfortable. And I'm sorry, but I have probably close to 40 different properties that border my property. And I don't want to take a coin flip of 1 in 40 that I might potentially, I want to be a good neighbor, but I might offend or make someone uncomfortable in any number of ways that are enumerated in the statute. And I disagree also with the possibility of jail time. I think that's a significant overreach. Under the current code, repeated infractions can be seen as a misdemeanor, which already can have jail time. The judge already has the latitude to go there if they need to. So no threat for jail time is necessary. And it seems kind of like the poor person put in debtor's prison where, if I'm in prison for 6 months, I can't rectify the issue very well. So I don't think that needs to be in there. Councilmember Erickson, to your question, I did a little bit of research. There's not a lot out there about what cities choose to do in terms of enforcement, but the number that I got for large cities, and I can give you the reference, I just need to dig it back out, was 26% of large cities had any sort of jail time associated with nuisance code enforcement. Those are large cities, probably more liberal leaning in my estimation. There's no solid numbers for smaller cities, but I would guess the number is less than that 26% that you would see in larger cities. So, as my time is probably running out, I suggest that treating overgrown weeds or accumulated junk or similar property conditions not be jailable offenses. Those are ordinary maintenance disputes, and there's a civil way for those to be taken care of. And sending somebody to jail consumes limited law enforcement jail resources that should be reserved for actual public safety threats. So I encourage you to not adopt this language as written and to revise it to conform better to Idaho codes and have greater clarity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you repeat your name again, sir?
Tristan Fitzgerald.
Okay, and the last one we have is Jeff Coder. Hayden, against?
Okay, what he said, okay? I'm gonna. Yeah, so just reading this thing, not knowing even knowing the backstory, if you will, it just looked very, very draconian, okay? And, jail time and all that stuff. But, and as Donna explained, well, we don't intend on really sending people to jail. But as other people have mentioned, if it's on the books, if it's in writing, it could happen. And let's say 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and that's on the books, and you people, you're no longer in the city council, and you get, let's just say some person who acts like a tyrant gets involved in this stuff. And it has happened in other cities where some older lady couldn't mow her lawn. She was 90 years old, and the city kept going after her. So one of the neighbors came and started mowing the lawn, and the cops arrested him because the city wanted to take her property. Okay? I mean, that's an extreme example, but, the point is, if you get the stuff on the books, this draconian thing, if it's in writing and it becomes law, well, then you're stuck with it, but it's like, it's like an HOA. It's kind of the way I see it. But anyway, I don't have anything more to add other than what everybody else has already said. So, I'm just against this thing, rewrite it or do something. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we have listed to give comment in a public hearing, so I will close the public hearing.
I would just offer that anybody who didn't get signed up could speak.
Is there anybody who has not signed up who would like to sign up and give public comment? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And I guess now it's time to deliberate, discussion. Would somebody like to start?
I'll start. It's kind of interesting. My wife and I, we actually had a discussion about this, and she didn't know about the agenda item. And I think everybody around here has noticed that we've had a lot of fires and the smoke, and where what brought this up is my wife said there's people, I think in Bonner's Ferry, that has said that it's not, you will be evacuated at some point because of these fires. And I guess where I want to relate that is that if we have properties that are overgrown and are a fire hazard because they're not kept up, that becomes a public safety issue. That's not an HOA issue, as many of you said. We're not an HOA. We are a city. We're tasked with the health, safety, and welfare of our people. And so I know it's critical to determine who determines whether that's a public safety issue, that property, because it's not been maintained. But if it has a potential, like I'll say, that the property that was bought, the 10 acres of Miles and Maple on the northeast side, there's 10 acres there, and that grass is about that tall and drier than heck. And if that goes up, you're going to have a wildfire that could go to the neighborhood. So, and I don't think we're contacting them to say we're going to put you in jail if you don't cut it, but it has the potential of being very dangerous to our population. So my big concern is that we do have properties that maybe are I know that the word nuisances, but I think has the potential of being a public safety issue because of they're not maintained. And that's my big concern. So in saying that, the question is, what deterrent should we go to keep our public safety or public safe? You know, should we just say, you know, slap them on the wrist and say, well, don't worry about it, you know? Because I've heard stories that we've had properties that year after year after year, we contact them and they don't do anything, and they wait till the end of the season when everything dried up and winter hits, now it's not a problem. Next year, the same thing happens, the next year. So with that in light, with the potential of more wildfires, we know that we're seeing more and more and more. I am concerned about whatever deterrent we have to work with to keep our public safe.
You want to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I have listened to Donna's explanation of like how we came to this, and I appreciate the perspective. I understand how costly it could be to enforce codes, nuisance codes to the city that is not recoverable except under the general fund. But this is a place where I feel like I'm called to really represent the people who speak up and who elected me. And I've heard some really compelling arguments today about this particular issue in Title IV. Mr. Fitzgerald, I think you really articulated it really well. When I hear that in your interpretation that our definition of a public nuisance does not match the state's and therefore might end up being challenged in court, that's a concerning. I don't have the basis to verify what you said. I'm just taking it on faith. I also agree with the statement that what we put into words in a code, although we have the best of intentions currently on city council and staff, could be used as later on in a draconian matter. I think that's a very valid point. When I hear that only 26% of large cities, as you quoted, have implemented, it was jail time, right? Yep. And, you know, the emotional appeal that we live in Idaho, you know, we respect private property rights. I mean, of course, we do in everything we deliberate here on council. I'm in a place where I feel like what has been provided for verbiage for this particular section does not comport with my perspective of how the city should handle this particular issue. Although I've heard both sides and I really appreciate the explanations and the arguments for, I'm very uncomfortable the way things are.
Councilmember Erickson?
Can I ask it, just a clarifying question? Are you concerned about the language throughout, or are you only concerned about the Title 4, excuse me?
Just the one that we've been speaking about, the
Well,
one.
we've been speaking about 2, 4, 7, 8, and 9 titles.
I know, and I've spoken only about the nuisance
Just the
code.
nuisance.
So
Okay,
that-
that's what I was hoping to understand.
I agree with Councilmember Schaefer. I have a strong concern with jail time being associated with nuisances. I think there's a very valid concern for something that is deemed hazardous. I think of some of the properties within the city that are large fields, large areas that when things get overgrown, it could be a huge fire hazard. I think that sort of thing would warrant the $1,000 fine, potentially. But when I think of case-by-case scenario, the majority of people, especially in this room, live in a single-family residence, smaller lot. I don't think the crime of having an overgrown yard and having an unsightly nuisance should be met with potential jail time. So I have a strong concern with that. And I think this should be carefully looked at with how we slap a penalty on this sort of thing. I understand there are so many different ways that people could be in personal crisis, and they don't have time to look after their yard. And I think about ways that we could get involved as a city where you're met with a fine unless you mitigate the issue. And if you need assistance, the community could get involved, or the cost of bringing someone in would reduce the fine. I think there's ways that we could go about it in more of a civil way, and to not be draconian. So my big takeaway, I have a problem with the language and having jail time associated with this. That's my biggest concern. And then I think we should consider how high of a max penalty per nuisance, if the $1,000 is warranted. And I again, to repeat myself, I think some of the properties in our city are so large and create such a massive hazard that could make sense. But for the majority of the homes, I think that's excessive.
Yeah, and one thing to add, I'll remind council that, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, we decided as a council not to increase the cost for people to appeal decisions on I can't remember exactly what it was, but it had to do with zoning. Does everybody remember, Abby, what was the exact subject on that? Because we decided, even though it was argued that increasing the fee would pay for the cost of the city to process that appeal, we decided that we wanted to lower the barriers so that citizens would not feel like they were prohibited from providing an appeal to the city. Do you recall that?
I remember that. I don't know if it's a specific issue or not, but I do remember that, yeah. Any other comment?
Yeah, just the final thing I'll say, I really sympathize with how much work the city staff end up having to take on when these nuisances are brought up. So Donna, I'm very aware that it can be a task that doesn't have an answer when people just stonewall and ignore. And so I understand that is where this comes from, that we're just trying to figure out a way to get property owners to respond when they're out of compliance.
I think it goes deeper than that, though, and I think it's something staff's kind of been biting the lip on, is the realization that where council has said you've heard both sides of it, there is a side you've not heard, and that is the side of the person who's receiving the nuisance effect. And it doesn't have to be on a large piece of property. It can be on a very small piece of property where junk is piling up, or they're killed a deer and they're left the parts out there and it smells or whatever. And they call us expecting government to step up and assist in enforcing what they believe is their quality of life. So we're talking about the nuisance, not just related to the party that is affected, the one that's creating it, but the people who are affected by that. And that's a storyline you've not heard. And we could share story after story after story, hundreds of them, people calling, asking for our rules, our regulations, their quality of life to be maintained, because they can't get their neighbors, civilly or not, to honor their quality of life or what they expect. So I challenge you all to think creatively about how staff will have to answer to that person who's calling us every day, asking for us to help them when we say, we have no tools, we can only ask for them to please do it.
And so I understand completely what you're saying. When I did a ride along, it was probably 2 months ago now, when I was with the sheriff deputy, one of those calls was that exactly. And it was a small street, it was a cul-de-sac, and this house, you could tell for years it has had work trucks, all sorts of garbage, barbecues, overgrowth, all of it.
We have
Exactly.
one where there's animals living in a house right now because nobody wants to go in and secure the home, and it has become a problem for the neighbors because they are now dealing with the the effects of that happening on there. And you have a dilapidated building that kids are playing in. I mean, so I'm fine with where you guys want to redirect us to go back. I just want to provide you a context that's not being considered, a voice that's not being heard here tonight, and that's the voice of the person who's feeling the effects of the nuisance.
Yeah, and so to finish what I was saying, I sympathize with every single person on that street because not only is it a nuisance, but it ends up bringing property values down. If somebody's because there was a house that was for sale on that street. If you are going to look at a house and you drive by a house that's in disrepair like that, I know me personally, I'm not going to buy that house. I'm not going to move in. And so that one neighbor is creating not only a visual potential hazardous nuisance, but they're hurting the whole community by their behavior and what they're allowing to take place. And so it hurts everybody.
And for clarification, you have the ability as council to determine what you deem as a public nuisance. That's what you have done by having a nuisance and abatement code. You've defined that. What this proposed language is doing is giving it further clarity. That's your legal right to do that. If you choose not to have a misdemeanor as the option for punishment for failure to abate, that's also a choice. That's your choice to build that into your code. But the $1,000 fine and the jail time matches the criminal nuisance code under Title 18. So if you choose not to have misdemeanor as an option for punishment, you can remove it. And then there's no reason to marry your civil abatement code with what the Idaho criminal code already says for a misdemeanor. So you do have some options here, but if you're inclined to offer some suggestions for different language for Title IV, first look at what do you want to deem as a public nuisance? And do you want these definitions to be different? Because the attempt here was just to provide more clarity to what was already in code. You already had fines and misdemeanors and jail time in code. You already had public nuisance declaration in code. You lacked in your real abatement provisions, like what is required for abatement, and then you really needed clarity around enforcement and violations. So I would challenge you, if you want to revisit Title IV, make meaningful suggestions on how you would like to see the language different, rather than just offering general overarching statements based on what you've heard.
My specific statement is I personally am comfortable with the language of how everything was defined. My one withdrawal would be an enforcement with jail time.
So remove the misdemeanor,
Correct.
infraction
That's
only,
that's
with a
my-
civil fine, with a,
That is, for me, that's where I draw the line. I think, I personally feel like that should be removed, but I'm comfortable with the language, the way that everything was defined.
But you're specifically referring to 4-1-3 violations.
Correct.
Okay.
Sure.
So, council has challenged us to come back with a better language. I'm not prepared to do that tonight.
I would not want you to try.
Yes. I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend to be one. So, can I propose that we at least shelve this portion of the code amendments, or do we have to
You can make a motion to table the deliberations on Title IV. And we'll have to determine based on whatever you all come back with or whatever your suggestions are, if you decide to table it, whether or not Title IV gets another public hearing.
Well, I'd like to hear
Yeah,
what everyone else thinks of.
I'll run through some things here. It was just brought up, and it's a huge issue. When do property rights infringe on others? Okay, and that's not just here. That's a huge issue in the community. Social media, you name it, people are always talking about property rights and whether or not, and I'm going to use an example that is exaggerated, but that to me, it's realistic when people say, I have the right to use my property however I want to use it. And that's what a lot of people are saying. It's mine. I have the right to use it. Well, that's probably fine until somebody comes in and decides to create a feces rendering plant next door to you. My property, and that's exaggerated, I get it, but it's my property. I get to do it whether you like the smell or not, whether it affects your property values or not. This is a huge issue. And where do you draw the line? How do you make this determination? And that's kind of the discussion we're having here. If you just say, okay, basically, we're going to have free for all. You do what you want, and you do what you want. And as Councilmember Erickson said, I'm looking for a house and I drive down the street and I see this not well-kept property or issues that I'm thinking, wow, I don't want to live near that. I'm probably not going to buy or offer or whatever that property. So somebody else actions are devaluing the ability of that property owner to possibly sell their property and have to live with that. On another issue that's been brought up, and I'm going to use an example here. I'm not using any names or anything like that, but I think it's a good example for this issue of community and neighborhood unity, for lack of a better term, assistance, whatever. Just today, and in the last couple days, I have had a citizen reach out who's struggling with some issues related to city, not even city, related to services and their health and their ability to manage these issues. And we've talked with the individuals involved, and it sounds as though we've worked out or very close to working out a solution so that this individual does not suffer the consequences that they would otherwise be suffering if it weren't for people working together. Okay? The example, and it's kind of a stereotypical, but it's a true example. My mom's 90 years old. She can't mow the lawn, okay, type of thing. And I understand there's people out there who are in similar situations who don't have the help that she has. But you can often find neighbors, community members, Boy Scouts, who knows, who can often help with situations with people who have trouble keeping up their property. Okay, usually if people reach out or even people recognize, hey, there's something wrong here, and they often will approach, can I help you? And that's one of the things they say. This is Idaho, okay, and I've been here 35 years, and it is an element of the expectation of this is different than a lot of communities and other places that people have come from. Okay, part of the deal is you help people here. You help your neighbors. You know your neighbors. You try and work with them. And that kind of comes into what we're dealing with here. Jail, I don't like that. No, I think we need to, again, as council member, all the council members I think have expressed, I would like to remove the jail element of it. The term, wording is very important, up to $1,000. I don't think I would hope we don't have any judges who are looking to be real punitive and with people and will understand situations. And yeah, if you have somebody who's basically being belligerent about it, saying, and you get somebody who comes and says, yeah, it's my property, and I'm gonna do what I want regardless of it, and the judge might say, okay, bud, $1,000. Okay? But if you have someone who comes in and says, Your Honor, this and that and this and that, I doubt whether a judge is going to hammer him. And most judges will try and work something out like that. The definition, I would have to see it because do we want to look at matching what the state's definition is, word for word or not? I don't know because I haven't seen them. I don't know what the real difference is in between our definition as related to public versus general nuisance, I think was. Private, okay, yeah, something like that. I think we want to be sure that our definitions are in line as best as possible. I think that's all I scrawled all over my note sheet here. But yeah, I think we need to maybe table in particular Title IV and revisit it here, clean it up, or make some of these, I don't think there's that many changes, I think, I don't think we're looking at, and maybe come back.
Well, it would be nice to get a consensus from council. I hear one council member say remove misdemeanor as a violation. Are we, yes, no?
Is that the jail, we would call it misdemeanor jail?
Yeah, well, misdemeanor, yes.
Yeah.
Invokes jail.
I'm for removing jail.
You're for removing the misdemeanor.
But I just saw my one point here. Do we want to, yeah, I've got, okay. Is the up to $1,000 a deterrent? That's really what we're kind of looking at doing, is creating something.
Well, a misdemeanor is punishable by up to $1,000 fine and or jail time. So that is defined by the criminal statute. If you remove misdemeanor, you can set those fines at whatever you want.
So without, yeah.
And I'm not saying give that amount. I'm just saying if you remove misdemeanor, then that frees up different language.
Button in here.
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rather than make a hasty and rash decision over verbiage tonight, just like I mentioned before, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't pretend to be one. I'd rather not go there tonight as far as how we're going to word it.
What's your process? Because that's what I'm trying to get out of you guys. Is there draft language we can put in front of you that will satisfy your concerns that can be done? Or do you just want to table it and make your own suggested changes?
I like to
Okay,
make,
so you're looking for directions so that the next time you come back, it'll be a home run, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, we're looking for directions so the staff knows what to do next.
all right.
Sit
Well,
and wait for you to provide revisions or put something together for your review.
I think we're all uncomfortable with the jail time piece, and I guess that
Okay.
makes it misdemeanor or not, yes. And then the other part was the claim in public comment that our language is
You
is
have
vague.
I gave you the language. You have a right as council to determine by Idaho code what you declare as a public nuisance. That's what the definitions are. In your ordinance, you can adopt an ordinance that identifies what you deem to be a public nuisance.
So-
That's what you've done.
We can raise the bar higher than the state is what you're
can.
saying.
Yeah.
So for
But
example,
he's not wrong. I want to give credibility to what he said because he's not wrong that there are private nuisance scenarios that are between landowners. That is correct.
so for example, our definition says, for the purpose of this chapter, term public nuisance is defined to mean a thing, act, occupation, or use of the property which is injurious to the sense or an obstruction to the free use of property so as essentially to interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property. Now, I have to agree, that's somewhat subjective. Who's going to say,
Then you go down.
do we want to
But you
focus
say
down and how do we-
weeds, and you say automobiles, and you say.
We
you
list.
give a list of what you've deemed or would. deem
actions
as
or types
public
or
nuisance.
whatever?
Yes,
So you may have
yes.
A through Z, 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 Z.
Well, you
But
have- you have a
yeah,
whole
I
list
agree.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's up to us to make that list.
Correct. dead animals. I mean, there was all kinds of.
Yeah.
And it's already, and again, I'm comfortable with the language and just removing the misdemeanor portion.
So,
It's also.
a few thoughts here that I had. I would like to table this for sure. I'm with Tom.
Just 4?
Just 4. I think everything else I'm good with. What I want to ask is it possible, because you said that a misdemeanor could be $1,000 fine and/or jail time, or up to $1,000. Is it possible that we emphasize for enforcement that we would prefer to have a fine, but is it possible, based on the scenario of what happens, that comes before council to see if it's egregious enough, if we need to go beyond that?
Not going to come before council before a citation or a charge is issued.
Okay, because where that came to light was when we had to determine, we had a dog enforcement issue, and
That was an appeal.
there was an appeal. So that's not, we can't do that. We have to have it in place.
And that's a different code. But
I understand, I
that was
understand.
an appeal.
But I know that we heard it to determine whether we wanted to
Move forward.
move on it. So we don't have that option. You have it in place and that's it. So as far as the misdemeanor thing, I would say that the fine, I would lean towards just the fine and go along with that. And then just table it to look at the rest of the language for. That's where I'm at.
Any further?
I agree.
So I guess what I'm going to ask for here is a motion related to the ordinance adopting code amendments to Hayden City Codes Titles 2, 7, 8, and 9, and tabling Title 4.
What, do 2 separate motions. Do a motion regarding tabling Title 4.
First. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we table Title 4 and then reconsider a public hearing on it or not,
Well, that's just going to depend on
what we do.
how many changes.
Okay, then just to table Title 4.
Second. Discussion?
No.
Roll call?
Council President DePriest?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember Roder?
Yes.
Okay, now we're probably looking for a motion to adopt code amendments to Hayden City Code Titles 2, 7, 8, and 9.
I'll recommend a motion. I motion to approve the amendments to Title 2, 7, 8, and 9, finding the request is in accord with the standards of Hayden City Code based upon testimony received at the City Council public hearing and the record of the request.
Second.
Discussion? Abby, roll call, please.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Council President DePriest?
Yes.
Councilmember Roder?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yes.
Okay. Now it looks like, did we go to the ordinance? Okay, let's see if I can get this straight. All ordinances must be read on 3 different dates unless council opts to adopt an ordinance by suspending the rules. I need a motion to read the ordinance by title only, suspend the rule.
I think we're going to have to postpone that to the next meeting because you've got all of Title 4 in your summary and in your ordinance.
So let us bring you back the
How about if
ordinance.
I mean, I can't just line out title.
No,
It's all.
We'll have to bring
it's
the
in
ordinance.
entire,
we'll have to bring the ordinance.
bring back for the ordinance back? Okay, thank you.
So then we'll skip section 5A.
Okay,
We'll bring that back to you at a future meeting.
okay. So are we ready to move on to discussion of future law enforcement arrangements? Did we split that up? Is that what we,
Yes, we
on
did.
5B?
Yes.
Okay.
And
So-
Donna, can you close that?
So we heard from
This one.
Matrix as to the status of where they are at in their process. And so the second part of that is the discussion of future law enforcement arrangements. Does anybody want to start it?
I have a request. So I heard Mr. Donahue say that we're going to get a report by the end of this week?
It'll be the first draft and realistically done by the end of August.
Okay. Does council get to put their eyes on that draft?
I need to work with the mayor on that, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get it out to you guys to read it. To the degree at which it's a public record is a matter of just something I need to work on with our attorney and our mayor.
I highly encourage that you do get it out to us. I mean, we're all adults. We can all figure out what, is in order or not.
Yep.
That's my only comment.
I did hear from Tim that it would be an interim report that we would get, and that he thought it would be a suggestion that if we wanted to do some investigation of things concerning our public safety after we receive that report, then I think that would be good advice. And so that's how I take it.
Comment to that? If we do get it by the end of the week, that gives us a week to process it before next council, and then maybe we can revisit it as a council beginning in the next month.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yeah, I think that is a reasonable path forward.
Okay.
Trying to be prudent with the timetable of approaching, expiration of our current contract and everything.
When does our contract expire? October 1st? Is that?
Isn't it end of September?
September 30th?
October 1st, it's expired.
Right. Any other comments?
No.
Okay. As Mr. Donahue
Shadow.
mentioned in regards to Matt's question as to inquiries, I guess, into potential alternatives. Again, and as he said, and I think at this point, nobody is looking to get into any solid agreements with anything, or, really, it's just, from my understanding, just there are some out there who have expressed interest. And when we do get that report, hopefully at the end of the week, I think it may give us a better idea. But again, I think I agree that it can't hurt to communicate with those who have expressed interest in potentially participating in some form or another. Because the last thing we want to do is get stuck and have to make an overnight or a quick decision. So I guess when we do get that, maybe we will have that discussion on the next meeting's agenda.
I have one question for staff, and that had regard to where we approved a budget amount for this new coming fiscal year on our sheriff contract, and what we provided an email, or we gave that number, or they know about our number, which is just a little over $1 million. Have we had any response to what we say we have in our budget?
Not directly. We've had, with the exception, I did receive one email from one commissioner who said that they took it as a priority of them to bring it forward to the board's attention. And I know the board met last week to discuss accountability, which was a component of our budget requirement, like why we were going backwards in our budget with them until we could sort out accountability and get a better understanding of our impact on law enforcement with our strategic plan. So I can only tell you based on that public record what I heard in that meeting, but they're working on some level of accountability, but I haven't seen anything. And they've not spoken to me directly about a contract.
Other questions, comments?
No.
Okay, so it looks like we're moving on to 6A, consideration of publication, hearing for fiscal year 2026 budget amendments and fiscal year 2027 budget.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a request that we bring up in the agenda B to allow our guests who are here tonight to do the Rathdrum Prairie Transportation
Sure,
Study?
I think that would
The
be.
chance to go ahead of me?
Any objections or?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move to the presentation of the Rathdrum Prairie Area Transportation Study by Ali and Marino, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, of the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, otherwise known as KMPO.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance to scoot on ahead. But again, my name is Ellie Marino. I am the Executive Director for the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization. And Councilmember Schaefer invited me here tonight to just give a little bit of an overview and provide an opportunity to answer any questions to the council on the Rathdrum Prairie Area Transportation Study and where we're at with that study, and kind of what that means for the city of Hayden and where that's going from here. I also have Carrie Ann Hewitt here with me tonight from ITD. She's the project manager for the study. And so I'm just going to try to run through this presentation pretty quickly. It's very similar to the information on the link that Councilman Schaefer had shared, and then get to any questions that you may have. Yes.
One thing, though, you and I talked on the phone and you had to kind of school me on how to navigate that website.
Yes.
Will you have a chance in this presentation?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
pull up the link and just kind of
Great.
show how it goes. So just a really quick overview. The study area for the Rathdrum Area Transportation Study covers almost 70 square miles from State Line to Government Way and then from I-90 up to Highway 53. The study began as an alternate US 95 study, but was expanded to look at additional options that may exist to improve the transportation system as a whole, particularly in the light of the extensive growth that we've seen over the Rathdrum Prairie. The purpose of the study is to look at what transportation recommendations could be to improve safety, mobility, as well as system reliability and resiliency for the current and future movement of people and goods across the Rathdrum Prairie and northern Kootenai County. Specifically looking at the needs to address safety concerns and high crash corridors and intersections, addressing existing and future transportation capacity constraints, and providing opportunities to increase safety, mobility, and connections for bicycles, pedestrians, and transit users. Through this process, so this started in 2003, we've had 2023. We've had 5 opportunities for public engagement. The latest being just a couple weeks ago, we had a public open house at the Kootenai County Fairgrounds where we reviewed the level 3 analysis and results. We had about 160 attendees and about 427 online users that attended, came and got questions answered, provided input, provided some comments. We've done some additional agency coordination with the Coeur d'Alene Airport and Kootenai County Transit. We're also going to be working over the next month with the Aquifer Protection Board, and then also FHWA and other agency review later this summer. We're hoping to have this study wrapped up this fall. There's been 3 levels of screening and evaluation over this study. And as you can kind of see, it's tapered down. So we really funneled from a large amount of kind of broad ideas and concepts and then refined those over the last few years to the alternatives that we have today to try to find the most effective solution. And again, we're in this level 3 evaluation, just wrapping that up. And then we'll move into the creation of the final report. So for level 1 screening, through a visioning workshop and public meetings, 53 concepts were created. And then those were screened against fatal flaws of feasibility, the potential for high-level impacts, and then against the purpose and need of the study. So we carried 21 of those forward to create 13 different alternatives for the level 2 evaluation. And level 2, we evaluated those for system performance, high-level impacts and benefits overall, as well as implementation costs and what that process would look like. So we carried 4 of those alternatives forward to level 3, as well as 1 alternative as an element for scenarios. and I'll go over those just really quickly. So the 4 alternatives that we have further analyzed are alternative D, which is a widened Hutter Road arterial. So that would be widening existing Hutter Road to a 5-lane section with an adjacent shared use path, with signalized intersections at those arterial crossings. So at Prairie, Hayden Avenue. You can also see on the northern end of this alternative, it does follow kind of that curve to 95, similar to the Hutter bypass alignment that is currently adopted. We also carried forward alternative H, which is basically the Hutter bypass concept. It is a 4-lane divided access controlled facility with an adjacent frontage road with interchanges at those arterial intersection crossings. Both alternative D and alternative H have new interchange connections to I-90.
So that one there, I'm seeing there's a 34-foot center divider. Is that what I'm seeing between?
Yeah, so this is just kind of a layout of what the potential for the cross-section would be. The final measurements of those would be further.
Roughly a center divider and then 2 lanes on each
Yes,
side with
yes.
the paths.
And it would also provide that center median if down the road, if this was constructed, if you needed to widen the facility, there's room in the center.
To make it a 3-lane.
Make it a 3-lane in each direction.
For alternative H,
Yeah.
is that highway on flat ground or is it raised or is that up for debate?
So currently, kind of up for debate, right now we just have it at grade. That would be something that, again, would be looked at more in the NEPA process. The Hutter bypass, in the past, we looked at having it a below grade option to help with noise abatement. But there's some challenges with that as well. So that would, when this gets moved into the NEPA process, that would be looked at in more depth.
Okay.
NEPA stands for?
Pardon me?
NEPA stands for?
Sorry, the National Environmental Protection Act.
Thank you.
One of the other alternatives carried forward into level 3 was alternative M, which is also a limited access facility. This is one of the 2 east-west corridors that we've looked at. And that would start at the interchange of Pleasant View Road and I-90. The access controlled portion would go up to Highway 53, then cut over across the prairie to that northern section of the Hutter bypass by Lancaster and connect into 95. It also includes a widening of State Highway 53 to 4 lanes with a backage road system, as well as what we're calling the Meyer bypass, which would provide an improvement to Hutter and Meyer roads that would make a connection to Highway 41 north of Rathdrum with a overpass over the BNSF Railroad. Currently, there is only one above grade crossing in the Rathdrum area, and that's at Greens Ferry Road. So it would provide another opportunity to cross the rail line there without interacting with the railroad. Alternative N is almost identical. So there is a slight difference in the alignment between Idaho roads and Meyer roads through this middle section here. And basically that is just trying to find the path of least resistance. There's a lot of development going on there between the cities of Rathdrum and Post Falls. They also have their land use application sites in that area as well. And so just kind of what are the options as far as making it from that point A to point B. We anticipate in the NEPA process that M and N would be carried kind of forward together, and that alignment between those points would kind of be sussed out based on, development impacts and that sort of thing.
One or the other, some variation thereof.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the level 3 screening process, one of the major points of level 3 was to look at all the alternatives combined into scenarios to see what the best combination may be and the greatest, opportunity for improvement. If we did more than one thing, what is the true benefit of that, and is that, reasonable to pursue? So we looked at a variety of combinations. You can get quite a few between those 4 alternatives and then the B element. To take a step back real quick on that, element B is a widening of US 95 to a 3-lane section. So going from the current 4 today to 6. And by itself, we didn't see enough impact for the rest of the study area benefits by just doing that. But we thought in the scenario process, potentially adding that would provide some alleviation along the US 95 corridor. So we did look at that in some scenarios. The alternatives of H, M, N, and D plus B didn't have enough benefit that we thought. So we did not carry those into a more in-depth analysis in level 3B. And then we also used N just as a proxy for the M alternatives as well. As I was saying, it's very, very similar. So likely whatever benefit or impacts that those scenarios would have would be comparable. Sorry, so you can see that here. We didn't use these scenarios in the middle or those M scenarios on the end. So again, just a combination of those. We have N plus D, so that's the cross prairie N alternative with the widened Hutter arterial. And that scenario plus a widened US 95. Cross prairie N plus the Hutter bypass alternative. And then including the US 95 widening. So those were the 4 scenarios that we also analyzed during this process. The link that we will look at, that Councilman Schaefer shared, we do dive into the system performance. We looked at level of service, which is basically just giving a letter grade to congestion at different intersections. So you have your least amount of congestion with level of service A, you have your most congestion with level of service F. There's a lot of colors and points on these, so I would just suggest that you look out for the greens, the reds, and the blues. Yellow and orange means there was no change in level of service with the addition of the alternative. So with alternative D for the PM peak hour, you can see some points here, Wyoming at 95, Wyoming and Highway 41, the Highway 53 interchange, Hanley and Ramsey, Celtice and Hutter, Mullen and Hutter. Those intersections we see improved level of service with the addition of this widened Hutter arterial, including these new blue intersections. Would operate at an acceptable level of service. With alternative H, very similar. You have some different points where you see some improvement, particularly along Prairie Avenue. There's more improvement with the alternative H. For M and N, you see a lot more improvement along Highway 53 and in the Rathdrum area. Very little on this southeast corner of the study area. And then similar with alternative N, some additional improvement along Highway 41 as well. For the scenarios and combination of alternatives, you start to see even greater improvement to level of service. Basically, this is just combining those last few graphics. So with D and N, you have greater improvement on 53 within Rathdrum along the 41 area and a couple spot improvements in the 4-lane Hayden area. With the Hutter bypass, very similar thing. When you start adding the B alternative, you do see a much better improvement along US 95 corridor for those intersections for both N plus H plus B and N plus D plus B. We also looked at travel times and what was the potential for improved travel times along specific corridors as well as some of these traveled paths from A to B. So we're looking at that movement from the southwest to the northeast part of the study area. And with these, I just want to point out, and I know Carrie Ann had shared some documents, hard copies with you guys up there as well. But green is good. So the greener the cell is in the table, the better travel time results that we were getting. So just as an example, if you look at Prairie Avenue, the eastbound in the PM, with alternatives D and H, you see an increase in travel time for D of about 1 minute. With H, it is about 2 minutes. But with M and N, you actually see a decrease in travel time. So that travel time is going to get a little bit longer on Prairie Avenue with those M and N alternatives. Similarly, if you look at Highway 53, just a couple rows up, alternative D and H increase the travel time it takes to get along 53, but M and N, increases that or decreases that significantly. When you're looking at Highway 95, alternatives D, you save about 7 minutes. Alternative H, you would save about 13. And alternative N, you would save about 10 minutes. And that travel time of US 95 from I-90 up to Highway 53. So that's just kind of an example per the alternative. When you look at the combinations of scenarios, you see a lot more green. We're seeing a lot greater improvement with those combinations. And kind of as you go, the more access controlled, the better your travel times are going to be. We also looked at crashes along these high crash corridors and intersections and developed a list of different countermeasures that could be enacted for these locations, things such as designated left turn lanes, advanced warning signs, mid-block crossings, those sorts of things. Those are outlined on the page that I can show you in a little more detail. We also looked at a predictive crash analysis. So what is the potential for the increase or decrease in crashes with the introduction of the alternative? These are just some summary tables. I wanted to mention with that predictive crash analysis, which is at the bottom here, some alternatives, for the most part, you actually see a decrease in crashes. But in some scenarios, due to the size of the facility, or just the introduction of new roadways, some of those frontage roads, or new intersections, that can increase the potential for crashes a bit. I highlighted just a couple things in this table just to point out for you guys. So alternative D and H, kind of as you go through these alternatives, you see gradually more potential impacts to parcels, as well as the number of acreage that would be impacted. Councilmember.
Yeah, and I may be jumping ahead of you here.
No, that's okay.
And I've been and I had this discussion with some of the people at the fairgrounds, conceptual costs. So if let's say they went with an M and H combination or something like that, would you add the 1.05 billion and the 564 million? Would you add whatever the combinations are together to get a conceptual total?
So on the next slide, for at least the ones we analyzed, we do have.
And those are today's dollars right now.
And it is in today's dollars right now. It's not forecasted due to, we don't know what the exact timeline would be for construction for these projects. But just to step back a little bit, on these summary tables, you can see that, D has the least number of parcels impacted, where M and N has significantly more parcels impacted as it cuts across the prairie. You can also see that it notes by alternative how many intersections are improved to a acceptable level of service. So 8 for H, 12 for H, 14 and 15 for M and N. And then actually for the average cumulative minutes saved during the morning and evening peak hours, alternative H did have the highest out of these 4 individual alternatives. And then when you get into these, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, again, where it said properties, residential displacements, D that's the Hutter and it says one property. Now, is that total displacement? Are we talking about, because a lot of the people in Big Sky and those are concerned about losing now. So are we talking about total, you're out of here when you talk about displacements as opposed to acquiring some of their property? That's not, that element is not on there. How many properties will be affected by right-of-way acquisition and stuff like that?
And Carrie Ann can correct me if I'm wrong. So those highlighted rows above are the total parcels that may be impacted. Maybe not the total, the whole parcel itself, but
Okay.
there's that number of parcels would be impacted. The displacements would be the total parcel.
Yeah, total, like, that, where we
Take the whole thing.
It would have to be a whole buyout.
Right,
That sort
okay.
of situation.
where there would be like a sliver that we would, need.
Some percentage of the property would have to be acquired for right-of-way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you can see with the combination scenarios, those are a lot higher. Because again, you're combining those N and Ms and H and Ds together. But the performance for those is also a lot higher, as we've kind of looked at with travel times and the level of service analysis. As far as the final report and moving forward with that, we also, while we didn't do further analysis of these after level 1, we did set aside some of the different concepts that were, brought to us during that level 1 process to set aside as potential projects to be pursued by local agencies or just broader cross-prairie things that could be implemented over time. So again, consolidation of railroad crossings, consolidation of driveways and intersections, updated signal timing plans, improved bike and transit, incorporating more intelligent transportation systems, that sort of thing. They also looked at specific location elements. So just a couple again highlighted that would impact the city of Hayden or potentially would be city of Hayden projects. An extended trailer path along Hayden Avenue from Hutter Road to Government Way, widening Lancaster Road from Hutter to US 95, as well as widening Hayden Avenue from Meyer Road to US 95. So those are just going to be outlined in our final report as the potential for, these are things that could be improved and maybe need to be taken on as separate or smaller projects. So what's next? So as I said, we're just wrapping up level 3 and producing the final report that we expect to have completed this fall. We anticipate all 4 of these alternatives will move into the NEPA process. So at this point, we're not eliminating any additional alternatives. So again, that further analysis as far as alignments, cross sections, if a facility would be at grade or not, those things would all be further assessed in the NEPA process. Right now, the requirement is to complete that process within a 2-year window. I know that we have some constraints from our regional office for FHWA as far as staffing and that sort of thing. So it could maybe take a little longer to get through approvals and revisions and that sort of thing. But that is a more accelerated timeline than it has been in the past.
Are you talking about just the NEPA
Just the NEPA process.
potentially? Because, I'm trying to remember back to the may take until 2028 or 29 just to complete that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. At that point, once that is completed, we could then pursue and identify what sort of funding sources. There may be additional sources at the state level. There may be different opportunities to pursue at the federal level, that sort of thing. So we would be able to identify funding because we would have a specific alternative we're going after at that point. We would complete that final design and then move on to construction. And again, as I said, we don't know what that timeline looks like. We have an idea for the NEPA process. We still have a couple more years for those definitive answers, but it depends on what funding is available.
A couple of years, you said?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, again, some of the discussion, and maybe from ITD could comment on this, but, again, understandably, this is all just, it's guesstimation. Because who knows what. But if I remember correctly, I was told that it's potentially commencement to completion, we're talking about 2040 to 2050 in that range.
Could be
So
potentially.
we're still 20-ish years out potentially if everything kind of ran and you got funding and so forth.
So that is, oh, go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, it all depends on,
Right.
I was just gonna say, it all depends on funding. You know, in the past, some of the projects that we've done with the Tecum bonding. I mean, this could be an example of something that we do with a similar bonding type project. Or, you know, maybe we might try to look into grants. And so it's just that whole question of where do we get the money from? And once we get that money, how fast can we get things built and designed and built?
Right.
And usually the design process itself is like 7 years, because you need to buy right of way, and you need to preliminary design, final design, and then you know, kind of just.
So it's not, and that's where I'm looking for. 2050, looking at saying, well, this potentially could not be complete until 2050 is not an unreasonable projection.
It's not unreasonable.
Yeah.
But there are other things like I-90 where we were able to, you know, make that process go faster. We didn't have right-of-way for that we had to purchase.
Right.
So there's a bunch of unknowns that we don't know at this time.
This whole discussion with regard to Hutter bypass, et cetera, probably started around 2000 or 2000. Yeah. this-
1997. Actually, was the
1997.
first time that it was written into a plan.
Yeah, okay.
I have a couple of questions, unless Tom was looking at me.
Nope, go ahead.
I know that basically a lot of your data that you produced here is based on the effect that these options can have. You had to look at the intersections and where these options are going to go. That's right now. My question is, between now and whenever this could move forward for sure, how will that stall or affect development that's not on the books yet, that may come? In other words, do you have the authority to go to the cities and go to the county and say, look, these are all our possibilities. You can't do any development here. Because then if they do allow development and that blocks one of your alternatives, what do you do?
That's a great question.
That is. One thing that I have not had a chance to read up on, but I was made aware of today, and I don't know if you have any more information on this. But from what I understand, if this is adopted by local agencies as a plan to move forward, that they have a right to require the setting aside of right-of-way to pursue these. ITD does not do right-of-way set-asides for projects kind of that are within the planning process. They do not purchase right-of-way until they get into that design phase.
So where this is an application for us is that if we have certain constraints on what we can and can't approve, and there may not be that option H, or whatever that's going to be the Hutter bypass. So we've held up or created issues for not only the city, but for property owners that will never happen. I mean, you know, I guess I just want to make sure, are we going to be required to basically submit to whatever you want to do and it's tough? Or can we just plan ahead with our own comp plan and design how we think the people want it? Or are we going to have to be submissive to what your plans are?
I don't think you have to be submissive to what our plans are. I think, as my stance from CAMPO is, what our purpose is as an agency and, why we're required to exist in an urbanized area is to work with all of the local agencies to come together on a unified vision of what they would like the area to look like and what transportation improvements need to be made. And so that is kind of, we've been doing this process for over 3 years. We've done previous iterations of it through the Hutter bypass, the Hutter realignment study, even back in 1997 with the Kootenai County Transportation Plan. And the goal of those is to work with the local agencies to create that vision and to take the steps that it takes to get those moving forward. I think going forward, and I know the city of Hayden is actually the only agency that has been proactive in having that right-of-way set aside for the Hutter bypass corridor. I think that is up to the city, what they want to do with that right-of-way, but I think, it would be a detriment to these projects to go ahead and now say, we're going to develop that land because we don't know when this project is going to happen. I mean, part of my goal and CAMPO's goal is to bring all of the agencies together to move forward with this vision so that this can move forward and we can get it moved forward in as a timely of manner as possible. We hear a lot about, the North Spokane corridor and how that has taken decades to come to completion. It still is not complete. And they've had to fight to deal with some of those issues of, getting right of way, addressing, issues of that corridor already being developed. And so, I think it is the will of the city of what you would like to do with that. But I think as our organization, we would encourage that for the communities to come together to say, this is our vision, this is what is going to be best for the future of our community and the transportation system, and we are going to plan for that.
So another question, if I may. I see that we have a map here on sensitive aquifer recharge area prioritization recommendations. I need some water. So what I'm seeing is that you are recognizing that whatever option you do, that will have an impact on the Rathdrum Prairie aquifer, because that's why you put this map together. Have you done any studies, or will the NEPA do the study to determine what the effect of these alternatives are? Again, I want to know, based on your options here, do you have any data or do you have any studies to say this is how it will impact our aquifer?
So we've coordinated with the Aquifer Board. They provided us with the areas that are sensitive. And then our consultant is looking into working with DEQ on, what we're supposed to do for aquifer sensitivity. But then we're trying to go even further than that and trying to work with our consultant on what do they do across the United States for sensitive aquifer areas. A lot of their engineers are out of Colorado or other areas where they run into similar situations. And so, but our goal this month, we have a few meetings set up with the Aquifer Board, and we are also, our consultant is putting together a package for us of what are some things that we could do to help protect the aquifer.
So you have no studies that have been done that will show the effect of any of these routes currently. Is that true?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
It will be-
Are you going to depend on NEPA, or will you do other studies?
I imagine it would be further analyzed in NEPA.
And that'll be something, we don't have our final design done yet. So we don't know the full analysis of things, but that's something that we're looking into and that we're aware of and that we're being cautious of.
And then do any of these designs, in your opinion, affect the aquifer?
I think growth on the Rathdrum Prairie affects the aquifer. So there are a lot of regulations around stormwater, runoff and that sort of things with the construction of roadways that have to be done to mitigate those impacts. Whereas additionally, all of the residential and commercial and other growth is also impacting the aquifer. So I could not say specifically that any of these alternatives will have a detrimental effect to the aquifer itself. But I think in general, we just need to be cognizant that the growth on the Rathdrum Prairie will affect the aquifer.
So will you be studying the effect of mag chloride that comes off the roads that we currently use for de-icing, how that will affect the aquifer?
Yes, I mean, we'll be looking into those types of things.
Thank you.
I had just one more slide with a couple additional considerations just regarding the city of Hayden. I think we've kind of talked about these already with some of your questions. One, all of these alternatives do touch the city of Hayden. It's the only city where they all do. And so I think just keeping that as a consideration. Hutter Road options, again, nothing has been set in stone. We have two, whether that's limited access or an at-grade arterial with intersections. One thing I would like to know and just have the council to consider as well, if a Hutter option goes forward and it is limited access, it will likely be an ITD facility. But if it is an arterial roadway, that will likely fall to the management maintenance of the cities and the highway districts, including those roadways and the signalized intersections. So just, food for thought there. Again, we talked about level of service. How are these alternatives potentially going to impact facilities within the city of Hayden, different intersections, the need for improved widened facilities, that sort of thing. And then also this element B as far as a widened US 95. I think one of my concerns personally for CAMPO and just working closely with we have a non-motorized group that we meet with semi-annually is that we hear all the time how difficult it is for non-motorized uses to already cross US 95, how it is a divider in the community, and how widening that roadway will only exacerbate that issue. And so just thinking about, what are our options? How would we address that? What does that mean for our communities if that alternative were to move forward? And that's to say for the other ones as well, continuing to divide the communities across the prairie. What does that look like for the community as a whole? So those were just a few considerations. I do have a link, to that story map if you wanted me to walk through it, or if you had any additional questions.
Go ahead.
I'll only point out that right there was why I contacted you and started this whole thing. It may not be in the interest of the council to take any more time to show that, but if you were to click on that link, you might be as confused as I was until you have somebody like Ally showing me, oh, you go to this bar and, so I'll leave it up to you guys. I already know what's going on.
Not that I want to dump it on you, but my guess is, as I'm sure happens with staff here, that when people go to that site, and it sounds like you may have done, when they look at it and they're going, what the heck is this? Guess who gets a phone call and asks for, can you show me and help me? Is that pretty much what happens already?
I mean, I got that from Councilman Shaver. I don't know, Carrie Ann may experience that more, but I actually was surprised about how difficult it was to navigate because I hadn't had a chance really to look at it before it went live. So when Tom started asking me about, well, where do you look here? And it took me a minute to figure it out as well. I think the most important part of it, let's see if I can just open that. Was I supposed to hit no? Oh, there we go.
Maybe you can quickly go to that bar at the bottom and just.
So here's kind of the main toolbar at the top. But really, what I found out is it just follows how it flows down the page. So if you just continue to scroll, you will hit each of those topics eventually. When you get down here to the alternatives, you can actually, zoom in on the alignment to see, again, this is conceptual, but how, that interacts with, the existing roadway, or properties, that sort of thing. But you do have to go through the different alternatives at the top here. And then keep going. So these along the side are all of the different countermeasures that are associated with these different numbers here. So that is what is being recommended as countermeasures for those locations. There's that aquifer map. And then again, for the level of service, once you scroll down there, you have this menu at the top. Sorry. Come on. I don't know if it's just being slow. It should allow you to choose between AM and PM. Oh yeah, so you can choose AM level of service, PM level of service for each of the alternatives. Oops. The travel time.
I think that is most often true with any website. And this is a highly detailed site, and even with the city site, that it takes a lot of time for people just to click on and see and, figure out what. And we're all immediate gratification type people who want to be able to just click the button and there it is. But like anything else, it takes a lot of time. Just what's this? Okay, what's that? To determine how to really navigate this and most websites nowadays.
Hopefully that was enlightening. Yeah.
Well, and can you show us where we can provide feedback? I know is the study or the feedback time period still open, or did it close?
So technically, the comment period for this level closed.
Oh, okay.
We had a comment form that you could fill out, but IT is accepting, feedback at any point. So I'm pretty sure Carrie Ann's information is down here. So you can call, send an email, reach out to Carrie Ann personally, provide input if there's anything additional you'd like to comment on or if you have questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Or you can call me.
Summary question. So out of all of this, I got one, everything's up in the air and you haven't made a decision yet. But two, quite possibly, you could do a combination of like a Hutter corridor expansion plus a cross prairie from Pleasant View and 53 to intersect. So I was sort of mentally running the numbers and I saw some astounding costs there. And then I saw like time saved. So is there like a threshold where ITD or Department of Transportation says we're not going to spend $1.5 billion to save 13 minutes?
Well, I can't speak for my bosses or anything, but, one of the things that I had noticed with comparing the charts, from the point A to point B, it actually, saved 40 minutes in one, comparison that I had looked at. So, so there is a huge time savings with, especially like with the M and N and
Yeah,
then,
cut across.
and then
Yeah.
when you have everything together. But it's all dependent on money and funds, and we just keep growing. And that's the thing that's kind of a challenge here is that it's not getting any better. And so at some point, we're going to have to do something.
I think one of the most common comments we got in this last level of public comment is just when are we going to start this? When are we going to have something implemented? And so that's really what this is coming down to. I think, we're wrapping up this study. We've had opportunities for public comment. We've had opportunities for stakeholder agencies to be involved. I know that Hayden's staff has been very involved in this process. And so as a community, as we go into the NEPA process, I think really what we need to do is come together and decide what is going to be the most benefit for our community. We need to be working with our legislators to, say this is important. We need to have some element of funding transportation, whether that's just for a match on a grant or that sort of thing. I think we just need to show that this is a priority because, as Carrie Ann said, the growth is coming.
Continuing.
It will continue, whenever that ends up being.
Along that lines, and I'm hoping the answer I get here is by the time we get to 20, 40, or 50, 25 years from now, let's say, and by then, my guess is the prairie is going to be wall to wall. It's going to be built out. Are these current designs, like I see 5 lanes on Prairie and M&N or whatever it is, what are those, probably 2 lanes each way? Or, by then, will those be, for lack of a better term, obsolete? Will they need 3 lanes on each side? Because where I came from and many other people came from, the Santa Ana Freeway used to be 2 lanes each way. Now it's probably 4, 5, or 6 each way. So.
Yeah. So all of this analysis was done in the forecast 2045. So it accounted for the growth that KMPO anticipates over the next 25 years. So that puts the county, I think, as a total, at the time, around 300,000 for a county as a total. Quite a bit of the prairie, as you said, is anticipated to be developed residentially and commercially. But with those numbers, this analysis shows with the alternative configurations that we have that's where it will function. That will be the level of service that it will be functioning. So then the next 20, 25, 30 years, would there need to be a potential for an additional lane or that sort of thing? And so that was one thing that we considered with kind of drawing out these different alternatives, is providing that, center area. So if it needed to be expanded in time, it could be done internally. The need to buy additional right-of-way wouldn't necessarily be.
By then, with our AI flying plane or cars that we're going to have, we might not even
Good.
need, it's just
We don't know.
25 years, you're going to need cars.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
So let's say the decision was made that one of these alternatives was the way forward, NDB or NHB. Funds were raised, construction is going to be started, and it's going to be anywhere from 23 properties to 26 properties that will likely have to be displaced. What body or what government entity is the one that enacts that?
So that would be ITD.
So ITD is the one that takes care of all of that.
Yeah.
Got it.
And, we do negotiate, everybody always talks about eminent domain and it's, we try to work with the property owners.
Yeah, of course. I understand.
Any more questions? Ladies, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda.
Mr. Chairman, if I could request that maybe we could take a 5-minute break before we move into the next one?
I think
Sure.
that's a good idea.
Let's take a 5-minute break. And then I'll hunt my agenda. There it is. We're back on, and we are at the consideration, item 6A, consider publication of public hearing for fiscal year 2026 budget amendments and fiscal year 2027 budget. Lisa.
Okay, so it's one agenda item because but you'll have two different publications that we're doing, and I'm going to cover the 2026 budget amendments. First, I'll start by saying it's not uncommon for cities to open up their budget at the end of the fiscal year to accommodate expenses or anything as we navigate looking at what that year is going to close out at. In this year, we anticipate, and that's why we're in front of you, having to open up the 2026 budget primarily due to the fact that at the time we set budget last year in 2026, we had no knowledge of what our fund balances were with enough concrete evidence that we could feel like we could budget our fund balance towards projects. And in particular, we're going to focus primarily on Fund 130, which is our major capital fund. Last year, we budgeted $883,000 of that fund, not knowing what fund balance was. Fund balance is currently just under $4 million. When we received the last piece of property acquisition for the Ramsey Honeysuckle, it's going to cause, if that project were to get done and completed by the end of this year, end of this fiscal year, which is anticipated to happen, fingers crossed, we would be $1.7-ish million over budget in that particular fund. So we're before you asking to amend the 2026 budget to account for the $1.7 million that we appropriated towards that project so we can put it in the an amended appropriation ordinance. The process to amend a budget is the same process to adopt a budget. So we're bringing that forward with you in concert with the FY27 budget so we can move forward with both of them in concert with each other, and then we correct Fund 130 so when we go through our audit for fiscal year 26, we don't show an over expenditure in that fund. Now, that being said, the bottom line number will adjust accordingly. The 1.7 million will go into the bottom appropriation ordinance. So what we had was 42 million, it will go to 44 million. Do I think we'll get even close to the 42 million? No, but we are in that one particular fund going to exceed what we appropriated. So we are requesting a fund or a budget amendment. So you'll see here the publication. This is just a screenshot of that particular public hearing. It's showing to amend the fiscal year 25-26. It's going to happen on the same day as the public hearing for the FY27 budget. We'll open them both at the same time. You'll consider one and then the other. But we will publish them separately in the paper. So with that, I would stand for any questions on this before I move to fiscal year 27. Typically, when you have a good knowledge of your fund balances going into fiscal years, you won't have this problem. We'll usually know how to budget appropriately.
Was this related to our issue with our audits and all that?
It mostly had to do with the way our finance department was in the transition between 3 different finance directors. So yes, it's absolutely due to that.
Bottom line, though, is we're not creating money out of thin air or raising taxes. We're just taking it from one bucket and putting it into another.
You're taking it from a bucket of savings into a bucket of spending. That's the best way of saying it. You already have the money. We just need to appropriate it.
And this is primarily related to Honeysuckle Ramsey issue?
Correct. So if there's no questions on that, then the hope at the end of this would be a motion to authorize staff to publish the budget as presented. We'll do so in accordance with the requirements for a public hearing, which is to be put in the paper twice, 7 days apart. And I'll just cover that really quick because I think it's important as we navigate the next discussion, which is FY27. What we are required to do in April is notify the county of our tentative date for a public hearing for the budget adoption. We notice them as that being August 25th. So we back up 7 days from there. And that's when our second publication goes in. Our first publication goes in 7 days prior to that. So we're looking at somewhere around the 15th, 16th of August, if I'm thinking about my math correctly. Maybe, no, 17th. And then 7 days prior to that would be the 10th. And then in order to get it to the paper in time, we're looking at basically getting it to the paper by next Friday. So it's important that if we don't come to a conclusion tonight about publicizing this particular budget for FY27 and the budget amendment, then we have to have a special meeting to consider any changes you want to make. The other thing before I get into the presentation of the 27 budget, I want to make sure council understands is that we are required to publish a budget to be, for the public to come in and make comment on. Once you set that amount, you cannot adopt a budget higher than that. But you can adopt a budget lower than that. So you'll see some strategic efforts by staff to present to you a budget that you can adopt something less if you need to. Okay? Questions on that? All right, as we move through the next presentation, and as council probably knows me well by now, I like to do what I call a build. So everything I'm doing is building towards a final publication report. So this, while this isn't the final publication report, there'll be elements of it that are moved into the final publication report that goes on our website. We have the 24, 25 on there, 25, 26, excuse me, the other 1 year behind. So we have the 25 and the 24 on our website now. This will go on as well as the 26, 27. So I said that right. Reverse that. Say it again. But in the end, this is all building towards that. So you'll see some elements of the final presentation in here and then other parts of it that will be replaced with final numbers as we navigate towards adoption. So with that, I'll jump right in. So typically in the final presentation, you'll have an executive summary. This kind of just summarizes what the major themes of the budget are. In this case, you'll see me taking a special lens of looking at transportation and our capital improvement projects, as well as investments in our moving and fixed capital. So you'll see me sort of itemize those projects and what we're planning on funding. And when we see large investments made in some of these areas of the budget that aren't specifically identified for the sake of publication or even this for the sake of the way our our budget booklets print out in our ERP software, this helps give the public a chance to see what those are. So I took the liberty of making it 2 pages because we have a lot of capital projects and investments being made. So you're welcome to read that. I printed you a copy. You have it there in your, and I even bound it for you guys so you could just follow along like a book. And if you see anything that you think needs to be improved upon or any errors, please let me know. I think it's really helpful to take the budget timeline and consistently remember what we're doing, what we're on, and why we're on that time frame. And you can kind of see we're a fiscal year. I call it the fiscal new year. We have a party here on October 1st if you want to come. We celebrate, mainly me. And then we move in from here, you'll see some strategic dates as we move towards the adoption of the next year's budget. So we're in that end of July timeframe where we're presenting to you the draft budget for tentative adoption and publication. I took this photo to be used in one of the newsletters. We didn't do one this spring, so I decided to put it here. But this just kind of gives the public a chance and the council a chance to see certain facts about the city. The 17th largest city in Idaho is, we're sort of in competition with a couple other cities that are, depending on the day you pull the US Census estimations, we might be the 15th or the 14th, and some days the 17th or the 18th. But right now, that's where we stand. Yeah, any other questions related to that, I can certainly go through it, but you'll see me try to take a stab at some of this every year.
Who's the photographer?
Well, somebody that's really cheap.
I said, do we have to pay a fee?
No.
For that? Yeah.
Yeah, she just gives up all of her rights to her images.
Yeah, give it away.
I find this to be helpful for the person who just wants to get in and just wants to see kind of the high level information. What are we looking at? We go 2 years in the rear showing actuals, and then we show this year's and then the future budget. The one thing that isn't on this, but I'll get to it later, is where we sit currently as of June 30th. You'll see a percentage of that. Now, remember, June is the 9th month of our fiscal year. So we're, that percentage of the year we see kind of where we're tracking and how I have the staff, each department, give me an idea of where we're going to end that year to see how we're going to sit at the fiscal year end with revenues over expenses. So we'll get to that in a moment, but you'll see revenues and expenses here. And you'll note on fiscal year 26 how we have much larger than the year before, and that was due primarily to the fact that we are investing in the H6 project. I find it also very helpful if the general public is looking at our budget booklet to help educate on the types of funds that we work with, because each fund has special requirements within it. And there's really 3 different categories. The general fund, which is our general fund primarily coming from tax dollars and service fees associated with particular uses within the city, like for example, building permits, encroachment permits, et cetera. And then you have your enterprise fund, which is primarily self-generating through rates. So for the city of Hayden, it's primarily our sewer. And then you have your special funds, which are funds that are primarily restricted to specific uses. So if we run an LID, we get money in revenue. You can't use that LID revenue in, say, to fund a police department, for example. We talk about revenues. Again, it's really good, I think, for the average citizen who would love to read this lovely book I put together each year to understand how our revenues work. We have, again, those general enterprise and special funds, where the money comes from. I just summarized that, but this kind of does a better job of showing you that. I also like to take the pie chart from the previous year. Go ahead.
No, here's, go ahead. I'm gonna need some.
Yeah, so this
help
just kind of gives a visual recap of revenue, where revenue comes from when we think about our general fund. The general fund and the enterprise funds are where we spend a lot of our time managing, general fund in particular, because it is a finite, if you remember the previous slide, it's a finite resource when we talk about taxes. And so we really want to study where is our revenue coming and then where is it going. So this just kind of visually gives you that.
Yeah, can you help me out here? Because my cataracts are probably giving me a hard time differentiating. What's the 4%? Let's go counterclockwise. What's 4%?
That's going to be recreation.
That's rec. 5%?
No, it's going to,
Yeah, see, I can't.
sorry, yeah, other financing sources. So that's going to be, I have to go pull my slides.
5% is other sources? Or,
Yes, I think so.
yes, yes. Okay, 6%, is that liquor?
Yes.
Okay, 15's community development, correct?
Yeah, so if you're thinking about this,
I'm just trying to make.
community events
I'm struggling.
is right
with the
here,
colors.
is, and it, when you're under 1%, it just makes it.
No, I'm not
hard.
worried about it. I'm just
And
trying
you're
to
going to
struggle
work
with.
back this way,
Yeah, what's 11%? What's,
community development fees,
wait a minute, what's 15 then?
highway distribution.
Oh, okay.
15 is highway distribution.
For the record, can you explain what that is?
Highway distribution. So the state, it's state taxes that we receive from licensing, registration fees, and fuel tax. But they call it, at the state level, they call it highway distribution.
Okay, 1% is
License, permits, and agreements,
license. 11 is
community development fees,
community develop. 3,
franchise fees.
franchise. 20 is sales
Yep.
and 28 is property.
Yeah, so you'll see recaptured and CEA, those are so small, you can't,
Yeah.
we can't even show them on here. So then property tax.
I was just struggling with it, looking at the, what is it, the legend or whatever you call it now, matching up the different greens and stuff like that, but thank you.
So then we look at, oops, sorry. Okay, so I guess we went right to revenues for sewer, keep it kind of staying in the revenues. You'll see the majority of our, as I mentioned, sewer is based on rates that we receive. So we charge rates for sewer, and you'll see the majority of our revenue, 57% comes from that. The other larger section in capacity sold is the connection fees associated with tapping the system and becoming a member, essentially, the customer. Any questions on that one?
But again, this has become somewhat of an issue, and maybe just for the record here. Someone brought it up, why am I paying cap fees? And correct me if I'm wrong, but and in simple form, isn't that a buy into the system for the expense of creating the capacity?
Right.
Yeah,
So the capacity is purchased by the people at the time that the
arrears in
money
effect.
that is paid out to create the system. And that, you take the capacity of that system, divide it up, or divide the capacity over the cost of the system, and you get a capacity charge to tap the system. To
Thank
become
you, because some people are saying, what do I have to pay $12,000?
You're essentially paying your proportionate share
Buying in.
of buying into
Yeah.
that facility, yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to expenditures. So when we think about expenditures, we really, we talk at the staff level as Our labor and fringe operation, O&M, you'll hear us refer to O&M a lot, capital, that's going to be our moving and fixed capital, and then our reserve funding. So when we talk about general fund expenses, you'll see me group this a little bit more in different categories here, different services. You'll see it's pretty spread across the majority of our city services. The majority of our money, though, spent is in public works. Obviously, that's a very expensive department when we think about the amount of roads we maintain and keep up. So it's not surprising. In most cities and most organizations that manage streets, that is their largest expense. So you'll see on our sewer fund for 25, the largest one being purchase and projects. This is primarily because we did the H6 lift station. This will change each year, right? As we do less projects, O&M will take a greater proportionality of that expense. But this last year with H6, or 25 year, the H6, that's the majority of that project being captured there. So here's where we talk about, but kind of giving you a tune of where we sit as of the 9th month out of our fiscal year compared to the overall budget. You'll see we budgeted 44 million. We're at just under 12. And then on the far right side there, you'll see percentage of budget. If we're tracking high, you're going to see that general fund budget, for example, being higher than the percentage of 9 over 12. So whatever that is, 66%. So we're doing pretty good, both in our revenue and our expenses. Now, in June, as of June 30th, we have not yet received our second installment of property tax. We get that sometime this month. I'm looking over at finance, I believe. We got them, yeah. So usually in June, or at the end of June, sometime in July, we'll get our third installment of sales tax revenue sharing with the state, as well as the second half of our property tax.
Sorry. Have you heard anything about the liquor tax? Are we going to have hang on a minute. Excuse me. Didn't want to. And there's something about ITD. They're going to take some of our liquor tax to fund ITD. Have you heard?
Yeah,
Is
they're
that going to
taking,
affect us?
I believe they're taking $2 million off the top of what they would redistribute back to cities. But the proportionality that comes back to the city is still based on population, or sales, excuse me, not
Is that
population,
is that
sales.
going to, do you know? Have
It
any-
will affect us a little bit, but not by a lot.
Not much? Okay.
And you'll see that we've taken a very reasonable approach, and I think we've pretty much kept it the same as this last year, because you're going to see prices go up. You realistically should have seen an increase of some, but we, for the most part, didn't take an increase.
Okay.
Any questions on budget update where we sit right now? Okay. So now, as we get into the remainder parts of the slides, we're going to be talking about how we've built the budget from our strategic budget meeting that we had in April to now. Those are very helpful meetings for us as we navigate towards today and then eventually towards the adoption. So we're going to cover kind of just all of the areas that affected budget and some of the decision points that were made by direction of the council, as well as internally talking with staff about how to build the budget completely. So with that, I'll jump into contract services and benefit adjustments. As council recalls, we heard at our strategic budget session in April, some increases across the board, but the direction from council was to, on the law enforcement, was to present to the county an amount consistent with the amount provided here, $1,080,470, which we did. That shows a reduction of about 9.5% from what we contracted to this year.
I think we also have to note on here that below that estimated year, fiscal year 2026 of 1.193, there is zero for capital, which were vehicles, which was used to fund that
A portion
service.
of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'll see the other areas that we contract with are seeing modest increases. I think consistent with what we're seeing, and probably even lower than what we're seeing related to CPI. So one thing we don't know in April when we come to you for our strategic budget is what is healthcare costs going to do. We usually learn that in June at the AIC conference. the June conference that they have down in Boise. We budget for 10%, and we're always hopeful that we'll come in less than that, but this year we saw an increase. I certainly can get you more information about that, but you can also go on IIIA's website and watch the video yourself where they can explain what the cost increases are due to. But generally speaking, as we all are seeing and know, healthcare and cost increases are going up, and we're seeing that being played out in our rates, so. The cost of living increase that council directed us to move on was 3.2, so we built that in. And then there are some targeted adjustments for certain employees based on years of service. And then as council recalls, we did talk about some new positions, and I'll cover those in a moment. Perspective of new positions, we looked at 4. The streets, parks, and engineering tech, and the records clerk. The records clerk is the only one we held. And the reason we held that is for a few reasons, particularly because we don't really have an adequate space, so we were waiting for our spatial needs analysis to be completed. And we want to make sure that if we're creating a space for that employee, that it's done so in a way that's consistent with long-term success of that position. So instead, what we've done, and I'll cover this later too, is we've increased some overtime expenses for that department so that we can still maintain and not fall too far behind and still use our existing staff to do that. I'm just going to go quickly over this same slide you had in April where we were making the pitch for why, but I felt like, I saw these people here tonight and I thought they would be really excited to learn all this stuff, but thanks, Tristan. So the streets department, as you know, we moved our mechanic to a full-time mechanic position, so that left that department understaffed. And with us adding more lane roads each year, we need to maintain a certain level of expectation of that department so they can maintain the streets and what the customers or our citizens expect.
Lisa? So the full-time mechanic, is that over at the Public Works place, the new one? So do we have a shop, now a mechanic, basically shop there too also?
Yep.
Okay.
I want to say he's very happy.
He's very happy.
On the Parks Department, we're just, if you came to Hayden Days, and you would have seen the amount of interest that we have in our community events, the amount of parks we're adding, it's only right for us to consider making sure that that department can also be successful in maintaining our systems and our being available for our events and making sure to perform, I think, to their best ability so they're not falling behind. So this was another workforce adjustment we asked to consider. Nothing in our city is getting less use. We'll just say that. We are getting more requests for special events, even though they're not city special events, they're special events that are being held by organizations. And those all take people to help run to make sure they're done successfully. Hayden Triathlon being a good example. It's a great event that brings a lot of people into our community, and our businesses benefit from that. But our staff has to be there to help ensure that trash receptacles are cleaned out and bathrooms, facilities are maintained. So we can't do that. We can't keep adding more events and special events if we're not also thinking about how to offset the impact on those departments. Engineering, this is a job or a position that has been promoted by our Public Works Department and Engineering Department since I started here, and I'm sure well before I got here. And we're finally making a pitch for the why, because it is important to look at how we think about our services. And it is by far probably one of the most used administrative services that we provide for our citizens as well as our developers and public. And it is a bottleneck, to say the least. So looking at this position as a means to help alleviate the bottleneck was important, and you saw that being pitched, and council supported us building that. We really need probably another position, and the spatial needs analysis that we got the draft back today on is looking at suggesting what another position would look like in this as we think about a 5 to 10 year timeframe. As I mentioned, the administrative records deputy clerk position was held for now. We're going to take another strong look at this in the coming year. Mainly don't want to get too far into creating new positions and then finding we don't have long-term funding to make that successful. So we want to make sure, one, that we have the space, two, that we can fund it for an indefinite period of time. And this is one we felt that in talking with the clerk that we could maybe look at putting in overtime expenses and trying to continue to make progress on our records. Council recalls that in January timeframe, we sat down and set out some strategies around goals and trying to meet those goals. And we mentioned that many of those goals would take some financial planning as it relates to the budgeting process. And so everything highlighted in yellow was a particular goal or priority that has been built into the budget for this next year and the representative amounts associated with that. So it may not be the amount that we suggested at the April meeting, but it is the amount that's in the budget now. So you'll see those being brought forward, and I'll cover them later, but I just felt it was good to connect our strategies in January to the realities of budget. So in addition to those priorities, there's also some other maybe carry forwards that need to be included based on our timing we got 2 months left, so sometimes as staff, we're having to take guesses on how quickly projects are happening and if they're going to thread over the next year. So you'll see us be considerate of that in our planning. So you'll see those top 2 being existing carryovers from this year into next, assuming, again, we're making decisions like this back in April, not always right now. So those, and then we're truing them up, but we still think that we might have some carryover. The website development, so this is something you saw we presented to council some ideas, and the mayor also had some in relation to the legislator in action page and the Veterans Memorial Map. So we kind of placed some money in there to either do some professional services in pursuit of either that or some other areas that we've looked at. And then the McIntyre Park Phase 1, this was not necessarily part of our prioritization, but it has since evolved into a potential option. That, I keep going back and forth on whether we're going to seek reimbursement from her on that one or if we're going to be just using park impact fees. But regardless, a lot of those funds are not being paid out of general fund. And then council will know that we just closed on the Miles property and we are working towards a master plan and design of that as well. So building that into the budget over the course of the next year. And that, in pursuit of that, was to try to get the developer who's building adjacent to come forward and help build out that park into some usable space. So every year, along with budget, and what you'll see as part of the evolution of the adoption of the budget is the adopting to the 5-year capital plan. We true this up every year with you guys to make sure that it stays alive and operational in the world of our public, knowing what we're working on and what we're striving for in that current year, and then what we're thinking about needing to save for in the future years. So this is no different. The only difference between this year and last year is that we've broken out our capital improvement plan into the 3 notable plans: parks, transportation, and sewer. I'm going to jump right into parks and street impact fees because many of these projects identified on the capital improvement plan at the top, the flags at the top illustrate the funding source. And then on the left-hand side, the projects. So when we bring those together, we can kind of get an idea of where things are being funded out of. Admittedly, under the streets department, we have exhausted those fees right now. We have no money in that account. We've done a very good job of investing those dollars into our intersections for either acquisition or design. And so we'll wait, probably take a year off of doing impact fee projects while we accrue more of those funds for the other projects in that grouping. So under parks, so you'll see a strong desire to want to invest our park impact fee dollars. As council recalls, we only have 7-8 years-ish to spend those dollars. So we're want to get those out the door so we can start to draw that account down and invest those dollars the way we told our community we would. I didn't take a direct look at all the special revenue funds simply because of many of them, nothing changes. We essentially budget the fund balance, which is a minor amount, usually under $10,000, in case there's a project that comes up. But the Honeysuckle boat launch was one worth noting because we did receive the Waterways grant, and because that will occur next fiscal year. you'll see in that one, a particular project of $325,000, which includes the $250,000 of revenue from the state as well as the city's contribution. So that, it will be a big project for that fund. It'll be the biggest one we've seen in that fund for a while. All right, moving on to capital investments. These, we kind of broke them into two different areas, moving capital and fixed capital. So we talk about fleet management and equipment purchases, as well as facility improvements and the transportation or systems improvements. I've challenged staff to really think about the investments that they need over a 4 to 5 year time frame. We started at 2 years. We've gone to, that you can kind of see the 3 year time frame of the forward thinking. We've got the existing year in there just to show you what we budgeted and how we're spending that. But then thinking about a 3 year, eventually we'll probably get a similar 5 year look. And that really is to try to show you that we're planning for replacement instead of reacting to it. Yes.
Didn't we buy a used de-icer a few years ago? Maybe we bought some type
Not
of
since I've been here.
truck.
De-icer.
What was that we bought a few years ago now?
We bought a used water truck.
That might be.
We bought a used bucket truck.
That-
Those are the
The
two
water
things
truck maybe is what I'm thinking.
that comes to my mind.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So really the point of this is when we're thinking about making major investments here, what we don't want to be is reactionary and coming to you with the idea of spending our savings on a project or a fixed capital or moving capital that we could have planned for. So I've challenged the Public Works Department to really get disciplined about this, and they've returned a plan, which I think is a great plan, and we'll continue to true that up every year, but it gives you kind of that outward look, and we, obviously we can't be exact every year, but we try to thread a similar investment each year. So we are consistently making an effort to improve and maintain the equipment that we have so that we can continue to provide the services across our city. So you'll see I talked about fleet. Now we're going to talk about equipment. Equipment are the things that we use to do projects where fleet is what we're going to be, usually has wheels and drives on the roads. So these primarily are going to be tools, and you'll see streets and parks broken out. This is a pretty heavy year because we haven't been very good about this department. So you'll see an aggressive year here, but then the next year, we're going to take a year off before we start looking at that again. When we think about our facilities, you'll see them, thinking about investments in the majority of our facilities being City Hall, and that's where you'll see the notation CH being City Hall and PW being Public Works. And those are really the investments that we need to maintain our facilities across our entire city. And in the very bottom there, you'll see some parking or not Public Works, but parks investments. And we're really starting to think about that differently, again, in that 3 to 5 year time frame where we're not just reacting to it. Continuing on, some more parks. So moving on to sewer, really, while I finalize, I think the rest of my slides, I'm getting close. I went past my 2 minutes, sorry, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at proposing a 5% rate increase, which is about $3.25 per month per ER. And really that cost is attributed to HARB's O&M cost increases, some collections, although minor, and then the really thinking about building our revenue for our future capital expenses. So when we think about that 5 year plan, we don't want it to be aspirational. We want it to be literal. So in order to produce the projects, we have to save for that money. And so you'll see a portion of that rate being used to build the revenue for those future capital expenses.
Lisa,
Yeah,
did you say the majority of that rate increase is basically passed through to HARBs?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
And, the way HARBS has operated in the last few years, it's been a bit of a tenuous, unknown situation relative to what they say they're going to do and what they literally do. So the best thing we can do is plan for the worst case scenario and budget relative to that. But also in that vein, what we try to do is absorb some of the costs that are coming to HARBS regardless of whether they budgeted or not. And so that way they have the revenue, or we are holding on to that revenue in case they need it. So we're not going to a ratepayer saying, gosh, we need a 20% rate increase for a year while we gain revenue. We're trying to, very logically take increases to build that revenue. We know that cost is
Progressively
coming, so that
cover
we
the
can
known
just cut the
costs.
check and not have to take it out of the ratepayers' rate increases. So you'll see the breakout of the charges for, respective of the rate being paid every month, how it's being spread out across the different areas of service. Obviously, the largest being treatment, it's the highest cost, and it's reflected in the charge. Because we like pie charts, here it is in the pie chart form, so you can kind of see that broken out. Last year, I went back through my presentation to council, and I did summarize the revenue bonds, and I think it's important to reiterate every year how our revenue bonds are set up to be paid for. I think it's also really helpful for the public to see what that is, and the council, as we change leadership and change even staff, it's good to keep that continuity of understanding. The city took out 2 revenue bonds to pay for the treatment, not capacity, but treatment, regulatory compliance that was provided to us by DEQ and the EPA. And in that improvements, we borrowed 2 different times over that 4 to 5 year period that they were doing the improvements. And you can see what we're paying, and you can see the time frame and when we expect it to close out. So. Okay, so this is where we get into some property tax considerations in what we have presented to council. So right now, if you took a 3% increase, it's roughly $81,000. We are not allowed to take greater than 8%, which can be broken up into really 2 different categories, property tax or new construction. The new construction can't exceed 5%. So what we've done this year, and unfortunately yesterday was the day that we were hopeful to get from the county the new construction dollars, and they were unable to deliver that. So what you have in front of you is what we presented to you on Friday in the budget, or in the public facing board book, was the presumption that we would have a relative new construction value consistent to what we've seen in the last 3 to 5 years, which has been roughly 2%.
Did the county indicate when we can expect them to get us those numbers?
Today?
They were hoping by today, but I have not seen them come.
No, we haven't seen it yet.
So maybe tomorrow, possibly Monday, who knows? Okay.
So what we've done with respect to this, and it's, again, going back to, if you recall, the beginning of the presentation where I talked about whatever we publish, if we publish something for the public hearing, we can't accept anything greater than what we publish, but we can go less than that. So you'll see staff taking what I could presume, and I hope you see too, is a pragmatic approach of the 3% property tax and a 5% maxing out on our new construction dollars, with the assumption that we wouldn't be able to take any more than that regardless. So what will get adopted will be what the county gives us for new construction dollars, which will likely be less than that or capped. So that total amount combined between the 3% and the 5% is $211,000. It'll probably be closer to $100,000 when it's all said and done.
Or we're just being safe because
Well,
we
we're
can lower it.
publishing at the allowed amount because realistically, we should know it by now, but the county has not been able to produce that. And because of that, we've got to publish by next Friday. We're going to take like I said, a very
Safe
pragmatic and safe approach of presenting to the public what we could do. And hopefully, most likely, it'll be much less than that.
Right.
So, and then staff's recommendation that we take the 3% and that we budget the 5% for now, so that we can hold a public hearing consistent with Idaho code and adopt a budget less than that. So I think the last 2 slides are really just summarizing the budget again. You saw this slide earlier on, but it's just a good rounding it out. Happy to talk a little bit about the differences between last year's budget and this year's budget, this year's budget and next year's budget, but it's relatively consistent with the major investments being made in our sewer department. So with that, this is your budget. This was what was presented to you guys on Friday in the board book, which shows the 36,633, and now you'll see that change being made, and I thought it would be good for the public to see that. Thank you again, Tristan, for being here. You'll see the changes being made, and you'll still see that being reflected. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Nobody? Okay, so with that, are we going to need two, did you say?
Yeah,
We need one for publication,
Amendment.
for the 2026 budget amendments and one for the 2027 budget. Do I have a motion
Correct.
related to the 2026
I'll
budget?
make that, Council President. My motion is that we approval of the fiscal year 2026 budget amendment and notice of public hearing on August 25th, 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? Abby, please.
Council President DePreez?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember Roder?
Yes.
And now we need a motion for fiscal year 2027.
I think Matt did such a good job on the last one, he should do it again.
Oh, okay, well then, my motion is that we approve the fiscal year 2026-27 budget and have a public hearing for it and then publish the budget.
Second.
Discussion? Abby, please.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yes.
Council President DePreez?
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember Roder?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're moving on, it looks like, to city administrator report and calendar review.
I just had a few updates on as council knows, Hayden Days is complete. I think it's worth tipping our hats to our events coordinator and rec department for all the work that they've done every year, and this year's no different. They work their heinies off and they do a good job, and it showed this year with the amount of fluidity that happened, no real issues. Some things that we will learn from and probably pivot from in the years coming, but definitely a success. Coming up on the 30th, so this Thursday of the summer concert series. I also want to acknowledge that we also have three more after that, August 6th, 13th, and 20th. August 21st is the summer movie in the park. And then, as council just heard, we'll be working on the administrative side to bring forward a budget to adopt on August 25th. So that's it. That's all I had, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. We have no report from the sheriff, but do have a quarterly prosecution report in your packet.
Yeah, so they give those to us quarterly, and I'll just start putting them in your packets there. I asked them for a more detailed response related to
Them being the prosecutor.
the prosecutor with regard to the cases coming to them, how, what is the status of those cases? How many of them are closed? And so they were working on I've been asking them for this for a while. I've been trying to get them to respond, so I'll keep pushing on them.
So this, the number of cases here are just the ones that the prosecutor is handling,
Yes,
been filed in court, but we don't know how many of those have finalized in judgment.
correct.
Okay.
And they're working on.
That would be really nice to know.
I did ask for that, and so as soon as I get some follow-up on that, I will be happy to share it.
Okay. Now I guess it's the time for mayor and council comments and requests for future agenda items. Anybody?
I just have a question because an email was sent out about this issue about putting something on the agenda. And I just want to be clear, because it almost sounded like we needed to put on the agenda that we would consider an agenda item. Now, we're not going to go that complex, are we? Because
What happened after the last meeting is Abby and I had a discussion, and the last meeting, it really did devolve into way too much discussion.
Right.
And so it was just a reminder that was sent out to all of you what the rules are, so that we can evaluate the best way to get agenda items without risking violating open meeting laws.
And so I think the hope was from Abby's communication with council is that if you are knowing that you're going to request confirmation from council members about a future agenda item and you tell us that and we put it on there as something to consider, then you guys can talk about it because the public has noticed now what you're going to talk about. But the problem is that with nothing being on there and then a conversation coming up, we're now in that area of potentially being outside of the Open Meeting Act and violating it. So if you say, look, I want to put on the agenda to talk about this subject, and we've noticed it, then we're okay to have a conversation about it and to talk about it. But if you just want to bring it forward here and say I'd like it on there, then we need to go and do that.
So then who has to approve that? Say I make a recommendation that we put on the agenda X. Is that sent out to the other council members to say this is going to be on? Who approves that it can be on the agenda
The
then?
mayor does.
The mayor does.
Yes, well,
his
but
agenda.
I thought it said you could overrule that.
Well, that's if he doesn't accept your request or it doesn't show up, then you can bring it up again and,
And then it gets put under a future agenda item discussion
Yep.
at a future meeting, right?
But he could reject that too, right?
not if you come here and get a consensus here.
Does that make sense? So right now, if you said, I would like to have on the future agenda item X, I would put it underneath, or Abby would put it underneath future agenda item discussion. No?
No, so do you have the document that I gave you?
Which
The
one?
Council meeting one? Sorry, I have to refer back to.
Talking about the procedures or whatever?
Yeah,
This council meeting cheat sheet?
yeah, so city council members have the ability to reach out to the mayor and request for agenda items to be added to the agenda. He has that authority to add agenda items.
Well, Idaho code says that he sets the agenda, so.
Since he sets the agenda, correct. And, however, if the mayor does not agree to put an agenda on, or an item on the agenda, council as a body has the ability to, have an item added to an agenda. So that's what that future agenda items section is for, is if, as a last resort, for the council to have that opportunity as a body to say, yes, we want to discuss this item.
Yeah, but how do we vote on that unless you put it on
You
the
don't
agenda?
vote.
You're not
on
gonna
it,
vote,
you
you're just gonna give us a head nod or a head shake
Who?
as we discuss it here.
In the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
So there'll be a little bit of information that you provide
Got
as
it.
to why you want to discuss the.
Got it,
an
I got
agenda
it.
item.
But you won't actually discuss it, nobody will respond.
You
We'll-
just vote, or you just nod your head whether or not
You
you
want it on
agree
the
with
next
it.
meeting's agenda?
Yes, correct.
That, the basic subject.
Correct.
That's it. Okay,
Correct.
got it. That sounds more simple than I thought. Good. Thank you.
Anybody? No?
I've got one.
Okay.
So even before the public comment, bringing up the flock camera discussion, I had already been planning on wanting to have a discussion as a future agenda item, just to discuss the ramifications and what we.
You say no more, I saw 3 heads nod.
We're good. It's on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
That's all it took.
All right, let's do it.
Anything else?
I saw 1, 2, 3.
Okay, number one, Susie, great job, all your staff,
Oh, yeah,
8 days.
the parks guys,
everybody,
all the staff did
as
such a
usual.
good job, yeah.
And a thought crossed my mind, and I already got kind of a poo-pooed it, whatever. But you know, the parade, it might be nice, and I would think the city could get a hold of maybe a little flatbed or something to make some type of a city float. Because especially with Hayden Days, that is a city, celebration of the city. And the staff is really, we walk in it and throw candy out and stuff like that. But the staff are the people who really, I think, need to be seen and recognized. And if there's.
They're working though, typically.
They're all
Well, not all of them. I'm talking about streets, everybody.
Streets are working.
Streets
working, parks working.
So on Hayden Days,
Recreation's working.
at the time of the parade, Donna, are you working?
I was.
Were you?
Yes, I caught her.
Well, something tells me that people nobody wants my float idea, but that's okay. That's okay.
We have the train, Kathy. The train.
There you go.
They are all working.
We are
Okay, well,
recreation,
thank you for the
parks,
education, but I just thought it'd be nice if everybody got to be seen, you know, as,
We do get,
As
we're
a-
down there putting them in their spots and like, they know who we
okay,
are.
all right, whatever, fine. Okay, it looks like that takes care of our regular business. I think we now need a motion to move into executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061A to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent wherein the respective qualities are.
You don't have to read
I
that.
don't have to read that?
Just the code section.
And Idaho Code 742061F. Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
Abby?
Council President DePreez?
Yep.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yes.
Councilmember Roder?
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Hey, Susie.
You want to take a break?
Do we need?